Chapter 453. A strong force morphed into a bloody whip and harshly lashed toward her. Chu Luiyue immediately backed away. The wooden table that was blocking it instantly shattered. Shards flew everywhere. Half of Qinghe Hall's roof was instantly blown away. However, the bloody whip didn't stop. Instead, it swept toward Chu Luiyue at an even faster speed. Emperor Xuanhuan, who was standing on the other side of the room, was also shocked by the commotion and immediately turned around. The two of them looked into each other's eyes. Deep shock flashed across Emperor Xuanhuan's eyes. Chu Luiyue paused in her actions. However, during this short pause, the bloody whip had already reached her waist and was tightly coiling around her. Then her body was harshly pulled away by the bloody whip. Emperor Xuanhuan's eyes flashed, and he actually hid in an even more secluded corner that wasn't affected. At the same time, the barrier around his body was strengthened. As long as nobody went near him, nobody would notice his abnormality. Chu Luiyue's heart sank. Emperor Xuanhuan's gaze just now was filled with murderous intent. At this moment, the bloody whip around her waist tightened again. Chu Luiyue suddenly turned around and realized that the other end of the bloody whip was in Situ Xingqian's hands. Situ Xingqian gently waved her wrist, and Chu Luiyue's body uncontrollably flew toward her. Chu Luiyue immediately pulled out her dagger. She harshly slashed at the bloody whip. The bloody whip broke with a loud sound. But before Chu Luiyue could rejoice, she saw the broken part of the bloody whip quickly reconnect. This blood whip was condensed from that strange power, and the dagger was unable to completely cut it apart. In the blink of an eye, she was only 10 steps away from Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian raised her chin and arrogantly looked at Chu Luiyue in front of her. It's indeed you. Now that she had broken through to become an intermediate stage 5 warrior, her perception of her surroundings had increased by several times. Just now, she clearly felt a very familiar and disgusting aura, so she decisively attacked. It really was that B*TCH. Every time Situ Xingqian saw Chu Luiyue's face, hatred would surge in her heart. She would definitely make Chu Luiyue pay her back 100-fold for everything she had experienced before. Thinking of this, she waved her wrist without hesitation. The blood whip suddenly loosened and immediately lashed towards Chu Luiyue's face. Chu Luiyue immediately dodged. However, Situ Xingqian's current cultivation level was much higher than hers, and it was the same for her speed and strength. Even though she had already dodged at full speed, she was still caught in the crossfire. Chu Luiyue's left arm was instantly lacerated. Blood flowed like a river. Because of this powerful impact, her body also fell to the ground fiercely. Her heart tingled, and she was about to activate the water droplet strength in her dantian when she saw a white figure flash across her eyes. The next moment she felt herself falling into a ball of softness. Xue. Chu Luiyue looked at Xue, who suddenly appeared and saved her, in surprise. Xue's 4 hooves stepped lightly as it carried Chu Luiyue up. A majestic lion's roar reverberated throughout the area. Everyone was stunned by this sudden scene. In midair, Chu Luiyue, who should have fallen to the ground, was sitting on the back of a muscular snow-white lion. The wind blew, and her black hair fluttered like a black flag in the wind. Not only was there not the slightest bit of timidity or fear on that peerlessly beautiful face, it was instead filled with a lofty majesty. Cold, arrogant, determined. At one glance, she was incomparably noble, and it made one subconsciously want to submit to her. She and Situ Xingqian were facing each other from afar, but even Situ Xingqian, who had a higher cultivation level, seemed to be shorter. Countless pairs of eyes that saw this scene were all dazed. Is this really Chu Luiyue? Chu Luiyue lowered her gaze and glanced at the wound on her left arm. She then slowly raised her head and stared coldly at Situ Xingqian in front of her. Her lips suddenly curved up into a cold smile. Very good. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 454. Situ Xingqian was taken aback by Chu Luiyue's gaze, and a tinge of fear unknowingly grew in her heart. However, she suddenly woke up in the next moment. Fear. Chu Luiyue is definitely not my match now. The one who should be afraid should be Chu Luiyue. Situ Xingqian suppressed her emotions as her gaze landed on the white lion, and her pupils constricted. That's clearly Rongxiu's fiend. Rongxiu has never summoned it in front of others before, and very few people know about this. I only found out about it once by accident. Now, it actually appeared here and even saved Chu Luiyue? Is it trying to help Chu Luiyue to the end? Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth and suddenly sneered. What? Do you want to fight with me? Chu Luiyue circulated the force around his body, and an abundant amount of force flowed out of his dantian and into his right index finger. You wanted to kill me first. Am I not allowed to kill you in return? Situ Xingqian did not care about Chu Liyue's actions. Instead, she chuckled as if she had heard a joke. You're just a stage 3 warrior? Her words were filled with undisguised mockery and disdain. Chu Liyue's smile deepened. Yes, I do. I'm indeed a stage 3 warrior now, but I didn't say that I can only display the abilities of a stage 3 warrior. Situ Xingqian almost thought that Chu Liyue had gone crazy. Okay. Today I want to see how long you can be arrogant for. The moment she said that, the bloody whip in her hand flew up again. She whipped it harshly. Biak. This time she used an even stronger force than before. When the bloody whip pierced through the air, it easily tore the space apart and left a few black cracks. In the blink of an eye, the bloody whip carried a strong force and went straight for Chu Liyue. Xuanhuan quickly dodged. Its speed was extremely fast and it looked like a bolt of lightning. The blood whip missed. Situ Xingqian's face darkened. With the help of that high-level magical beast, not to mention killing Chu Liyue, even wanting to injure her had become a difficult task. She raised her wrist. The blood whip chased after Chu Liyue. Xuanhuan's figure flashed, and she easily dodged the attack again. Situ Xingqian refused to believe it and attacked again. Above the blood whip, there was even a faint layer of green-red light. The power contained within it was much stronger than the previous 2 times. When the bloody whip flew out, Situ Xingqian angrily shouted, "What the hell? Don't run if you have the guts." Before Chu Liyue could reply, Xuanhuan had already turned around and raised a claw, swinging it forward fiercely. Whoosh! The blood whip was torn apart by Xuanhuan's claws. Situ Xingqian gasped. This magical beast was actually stronger than he had imagined? Xuanhuan glanced at Situ Xingqian. Her icy blue eyes were cold and indifferent. It was as if she was looking down on an ant. Chu Liyue lightly patted Xuanhuan's head. Well done. Chu Liyue blinked and smiled. Isn't it my capability that I can summon such a fiend to help me? I didn't say that you can't do this. Since you hate me to the core, just use whatever means you have. Situ Xingqian's chest seemed to be choked by something, and her face flushed red. How can a normal fiend be these two's match? Chu Liyue suddenly shouted, "Xue Xingqian." Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan seemed to have telepathy with her as it stomped on the ground and instantly rushed towards Situ Xingqian. Upon seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. Is Chu Liyue actually planning to fight Situ Xingqian head-on? That white lion is a high-level fiend. Didn't you see how easily it defeated Situ Xingqian's attack? With its help, Chu Liyue might win. But Situ Xingqian is a few grades stronger than her. If they fight head-on, Chu Liyue will definitely be at a disadvantage. 2 rays of light, 1 green and 1 red, gathered in Situ Xingqian's hands. Then she harshly clasped her hands together. The 2 rays of light instantly clashed together. Dual palms. Chu Liyue raised her hand. On her right index finger, a dazzling ray of light suddenly flashed. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 455. That ray of light shone in her eyes, and it was dazzling beyond compare. However, this ray of light was nothing compared to the gigantic greenish-red palm print that Situ Xingqian executed in midair. Everyone's gaze was focused on the palm print that contained a strong suppression. Chu Liyue looked up and squinted her eyes slightly. There seemed to be a strange pattern in the middle of the palm print, and it was faintly discernible. It was exactly the same as the pattern that appeared on the light pillar previously. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. That pattern was clearly a seal, but for some reason, it appeared on the palm print again. Suddenly she felt a movement coming from the cosmic bag. It was the wooden box that she snatched from Situ Xingqian previously. That strange pattern seemed to contain a special power. Every time it appeared, it would cause a huge reaction from the wooden box. At this moment, Situ Xingqian hollered, "Go!" That palm print slowly moved toward Chu Liyue. A strong suppression was continuously emitted from it. The surrounding space seemed to be greatly suppressed as it became heavy and stagnant. Chu Liyue could clearly feel that she was in a swamp, and every move she made required a lot of effort. Situ Xingqian's power has definitely reached the peak of stage 5. Chu Liyue is probably in danger. She actually rushed forward. It's definitely too late for her to escape now. I really don't know what she's thinking. The crowd discussed fervently. Chu Liyue, who was in midair, didn't hear them. But even if she could hear them, she wouldn't care. Since she dared to do this, she naturally has her reasons. That gigantic palm print seemed to be moving slowly, but it was actually very fast. In the blink of an eye, it was right in front of Chu Luiyue. In comparison, Chu Luiyue looked exceptionally thin and petite, as if she would be swallowed by that palm print at any moment. But at this moment, Chu Luiyue finally stretched out her right hand and lightly tapped forward with her index finger. Jingshin finger. Buzz. A ripple suddenly appeared in midair. Then, the faint glow on his fingertips suddenly shone brightly. Half of the sky above Chu Luiyue's head seemed to have lit up. That light was grand, brilliant, and majestic. It was as if it could generously and gently encompass everything in the world. Under the illumination of this light, the strange pattern on the palm print suddenly appeared extremely ugly. The power of both sides intertwined. Like snow meeting sunlight, the palm print actually began to quietly and quickly melt away. The smug smile on Situ Xingqian's face suddenly froze, and fear crept into her eyes. How could this be? How could this be? She had used all of her strength in this attack. But why was he defeated so quickly after Chu Luiyue made his move? From the looks of it, there was no room for a counterattack. They all went for Chu Luiyue's face. Chu Luiyue leaned forward. She didn't know how her wrist moved, but it avoided Situ Xingqian's move and tightly clamped onto her wrist. Then she exerted force with her fingers and tightly clenched them. Gotcha. The crisp sound of a bone breaking was heard. Ah! Situ Xingqian cried out in pain. Her entire face turned pale. At that moment, there was only one thought left in her mind. Why is Chu Luiyue's wrist so strong? Situ Xingqian instinctively raised her leg and kicked at Chu Luiyue. However, Chu Luiyue was even faster. Bang! The two people's legs harshly collided. Situ Xingqian felt as if she had hit a metal plate, and her entire leg instantly turned numb. After a short pause, intense pain surged through her. She suddenly looked up and stared at Chu Luiyue with eyes full of resentment. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up, and a cold glint flashed across her palm. It went straight for Situ Xingqian's heart. Situ Xingqian was shocked. She immediately tried her best to dodge it. That dagger pierced into her chest and was only a few centimeters away from her heart. However, Chu Luiyue didn't let go. Instead, he tightened his grip on the dagger's handle and harshly twisted it. Separate. Two thin flying daggers instantly entered Situ Xingqian's body. Digression. I'm adjusting my schedule today. I'll take my medicine and sleep later. I hope I can sleep well. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock a.m. please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 456. Two cold, piercing sensations instantly spread throughout her body. Situ Xingqian's face turned pale, and she slowly lowered her head to take a look. Blood slowly seeped out from the front of her shirt. Choo-choo. Two flying daggers pierced through her chest and flew out. Chu Luiyue bent his arm and harshly hit her shoulder with his elbow. Situ Xingqian violently spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward. Chu Luiyue hurriedly dodged and jumped onto Xue's back, which happened to rush over. Bang! Situ Xingqian landed heavily on the ground. As the force of the impact was too strong, her body dragged on the ground for a long time before finally stopping. A long trail of blood was left on the ground, and it looked ghastly. There was dead silence in the sky. Almost everyone thought that Chu Luiyue was dead for sure, but they didn't expect Situ Xingqian to be the one who lost after the two of them had an intense fight. Even though the fiend's appearance couldn't go unnoticed, Chu Luiyue did personally knock Situ Xingqian down just now. Elder Yi and Elder Zhongyi, who were in the midst of a chaotic fight, finally stopped when they saw this scene. However, the two of them had very different expressions. Elder Ye's worries instantly disappeared, and the wrinkles on his face bloomed like a flower. His eyes were filled with unconcealable delight. I've long said that Situ Xingqian doesn't have the right to be compared to Luyu. Zhongyi. What else do you have to say now? Elder Zhongye's face was so ugly that it was as if he had swallowed a fly. Situ Xingqian's cultivation level is clearly much higher than Chu Luiyue's. How could she lose? I originally thought that I would definitely win this match. Yet it ended up like this. His eyes flickered, and he immediately wanted to go forward. Sigh. Zhongyi, what are you planning to do? Old Man Yi moved and stood in front of Elder Zhongyi, his face full of smiles. Zhongyi's face darkened. You want to stop me? Look at what you're saying. Didn't you also stop me just now? We're the same. Looking at Zhongyi's ugly face, Elder Yi only felt proud and elated. Just now I wanted to help Luyu, but this fellow stopped me. Now I want to help Situ Xingqian. How can it be so easy? Elder Zhongyi frowned. With Yi Zhiding around, he couldn't spare any time to help at all. Didn't you say earlier that you wanted to see who would win in the end? Then, why don't we watch it together? Elder Ye's face was full of smiles, but the biting cold aura around him made it clear that he absolutely would not let Elder Zhongyi pass. Elder Zhongye's heart was filled with hatred. While the two of them were talking, Shuai had already swooped down with Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue easily leaped and landed on the ground. Situ Xingqian struggled to stand up. However, the wounds on his body were still bleeding. The pain on her shoulder and back was intense. She didn't need to look to know that her shoulder blade had been pierced. "Didn't you want to fight me one-on-one?" Chu Luiyue said slowly as he played with the dagger in his hand. "As you wish." It was much more convenient for the two of them to fight on the ground. When Situ Xingqian saw Chu Luiyue's nonchalant smile, she couldn't help but shiver harshly. She only felt that the current Chu Luiyue was like a demon that walked out of hell. "What do you want to do?" Situ Xingqian yelled fiercely. "I am country Xing Luo's eldest princess. How dare you touch me?" Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Eldest Princess Situ, of course I know your identity. But didn't I just punch a hole through you? You don't have to ask such nonsense, right?" Situ Xingqian's heart sank. Chu Luiyue really looks like he doesn't have any reservations at all. "You seem to have forgotten what you just did." Chu Luiyue lifted his chin, and his gaze swept across her entire body. "Who do you think will speak up for you now?" After causing such a huge commotion in country Yao Chen's palace, neither Emperor Jiawen nor Rongjio would let this matter rest. Besides, Situ Xingqian was in the wrong first. Previously, Situ Yen couldn't save her, so it's even more impossible this time. As Chu Luiyue spoke, he took a step forward. Panic flashed across Situ Xingqian's eyes, and she instinctively took a step back. The current me might not even be Chu Luiyue's match. Besides, Chu Luiyue has an advanced fiend helping him. Situ Xingqian's heart became increasingly frantic, and something crazily moved in her chest, wanting to rush out. It would be great if he could become stronger. It was as if a sharp voice kept reverberating in her mind. Chu Luiyue squinted his eyes and was about to go forward to finish Situ Xingqian off completely when he saw her suddenly look up. A bloody glow flashed across Situ Xingqian's eyes. Chu Luiyue's eyes shrunk. Instinctively, he felt that something was amiss with Situ Xingqian. Previously, Situ Xingqian's eyes were actually bloodshot, but Chu Luiyue thought that she became like that because of her anger and agitation. But now, that bloody red color seemed to have become even more intense. The most important thing was that Situ Xingqian's pupils had actually turned red as well. From afar they looked like two eyeballs filled with craziness and murderous aura. Dong dong. A strange sound came from the xianxia bag. Dong dong. This time the sound was even clearer. Chu Luiyue suddenly understood something. This was the sound from the wooden box in the cosmic bag. The thing inside seemed to have been summoned and crazily wanted to come out. She lowered her head and was about to suppress it when she suddenly saw a ray of light rushing out and heading straight for Situ Xingqian. It was that wooden box. Situ Xingqian grabbed the wooden box in her hands. Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. Then she saw Situ Xingqian open the wooden box. That goatskin scroll glowed faintly as it floated in front of Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian threw the wooden box down and slowly bit her fingertip. A drop of blood quickly flowed out. The next moment, she held the goatskin scroll in her hands and used her bleeding finger to lightly draw a line on it. Chu Luiyue stared at this scene closely and felt that she seemed to have overlooked something. After looking at it for a while, she finally understood what was going on. Situ Xingqian seemed to be controlled by something. At this moment, there was no longer any normal emotions in her pair of eyes. There was only endless craziness and murderous intent left. Her movements were stiff and slow, as if there was an invisible hand that was controlling everything about her. Chu Luiyue's gaze landed on the goatskin scroll again. Suddenly her eyes focused. The picture that Situ Xingqian drew with her blood was clearly Chu. Chu Luiyue quickly threw the dagger in her hand. It went straight for Situ Xingqian. But at this moment, Situ Xingqian had already drawn the last line. The complete and strange picture appeared in front of her eyes. Ding! The dagger seemed to have hit something and suddenly bounced back. The next moment, the goatskin scroll slowly opened up. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 457. A blinding red light instantly exploded from the parchment and completely surrounded Situ Xingqian. Then countless tiny cracks instantly appeared on Situ Xingqian's body. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. With a bang, Situ Xingqian fell to the ground and curled up into a ball. Her mind was blank and she only felt pain and itchiness all over her body. It was as if thousands of ants were crazily biting her. Situ Xingqian almost instinctively scratched her body. Not only did she tear her clothes, but she even used her delicately manicured nails to leave streaks of blood on her skin. When her neck was scratched out of shape, she finally reached her hand to her face. Then she scratched it harshly without hesitation. A few streaks of blood instantly covered half of her face. Her originally pretty face was ruined in an instant. It became ugly and scary. Ah! Situ Xingqian screamed hysterically. Upon seeing this scene, Chu Luiyue knitted his brows tightly. Situ Xingqian's body is clearly being taken over. Also, the person who wants to take over her body has a very high cultivation level. That's why her physical body couldn't withstand the terrifying suppression, and her skin and flesh were torn apart. It's no wonder I couldn't break the barrier on the parchment no matter what. It turns out that there's another cultivator's soul hidden inside. Situ Xingqian's body gradually stopped twitching. The moment the red light on her body disappeared, she slowly stood up and looked up at Chu Luiyue. That's a completely different pair of eyes. Unfamiliar, cold, and ruthless. Alarm bells rang in Chu Luiyue's heart, and he immediately retreated. But at this moment, Situ Xingqian raised her hand. Chu Luiyue only felt a strong suction force enveloping his entire body, and his entire body uncontrollably fell forward. Shui roared angrily and jumped over. Situ Xingqian's gaze turned and coldly glanced at it. A huge blood-red barrier instantly appeared, blocking Shui outside. Bang! Shui slammed heavily into the barrier. However, the barrier wasn't damaged at all. Many ways to escape flashed across Chu Luiyue's mind, but she quickly realized that the force in her body was being suppressed by the other party's suppression. Under this terrifying suppression, her body almost couldn't move. The next moment, Situ Xingqian suddenly grabbed her neck. Chu Luiyue's neck tightened. Situ Xingqian looked at Chu Luiyue from above, and her lips curled into a cold smile. I really have to thank you. Even though it was the same face and voice, Chu Luiyue knew that this wasn't the real Situ Xingqian when she saw the pair of eyes. Without you, Shui and Situ Shui and it. Chu Luiyue's neck was strangled, and her entire body was suspended in the air. As the hand kept tightening, Chu Luiyue's face gradually flushed red, and her chest felt so stifled that it was about to explode. Why you? The person who asked this question wasn't the real Situ Xingqian but the person who took over her body. However, there doesn't seem to be anything special about this dagger, so why did she have such a reaction? Seeing that Chu Luiyue didn't react, Situ Xingqian became even more anxious and took a step forward. Hurry up and say it. A thought suddenly flashed across Chu Luiyue's mind. This dagger was given to me by Rongxiu back then. Also, if I didn't remember wrongly, he seemed to have personally polished it. This should be the only one in the world and other people shouldn't be able to recognize it. This person's reaction is really too strange. What if I don't want to say it? Chu Luiyue asked word by word. Situ Xingqian chuckled. You don't want to say it, right? I naturally have my ways to make you say it clearly. The moment she said that, she quickly crossed her hands in front of her, and the force around her crazily surged. A ball of white flame quickly burned in front of her. Then the flame split into two and completely surrounded Chu Luiyue. Her figure was instantly surrounded by the scorching flame. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 458. The fire burned fiercely. It was as if it was going to burn everything to ashes. Lu Yu. Elder Yi couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Elder Zhong Yi, who had been fighting for a long time, finally found a chance and punched Elder Ye's chest. Elder Ye's body trembled, and he only stabilized himself after taking a few steps back. Blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. Elder Zhong Yi looked at the burning fire. Chu Luiyue's figure had almost disappeared. Yi Zhiding, it seems like your precious disciple is going to die this time. Elder Yi clenched his fists and looked at Elder Zhong Yi as if he was looking at an idiot. Zhong Yi, has your brain been eaten by a dog? Can't you tell that Situ Xingqian's body has long been possessed? That woke him up from his dream. Upon hearing the word, possessed, Elder Zhong Yi's heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly looked at Situ Xingqian. He didn't notice it previously but now that he looked at it again, he felt that everything was strange. He and Yi Zhiding were locked in a fight, so he didn't notice Situ Xingqian and Chu Luiyue's situation. He only vaguely remembered that Situ Xingqian seemed to have gone through a shocking change, and her abilities suddenly increased by a lot. Previously, he thought that Situ Xingqian had become stronger because she had absorbed more energy. But now that he took a closer look, he realized that her aura seemed to be completely different from before. Every cultivator's aura was different. The current Situ Xingqian did seem to have become another person. Elder Yi wanted to twist Zhong Ye's head off and see what kind of trash was inside. As a stage 6 warrior, he didn't even notice this. But now he only cared about Chu Luiyue. Elder Yi finally shook Elder Zhong Yi off while he was in a daze and went straight for Chu Luiyue. At the same time, Jian Fengqi, who was hiding in the dark, saw this scene and squinted his eyes. His attention was mostly on Situ Xingqian at this point. A soul that can possess a body is at least a stage 7 warrior when they were alive. Country Yao Chen may seem ordinary, but there are many secrets hidden in it. From the looks of it, Mu Qinghe had left a little too early and missed out on so many exciting shows. His gaze landed on the fire and he raised his eyebrows. Although he felt that Chu Luiyue, Situ Xingqian's SS. Situ Xingqian, and Situ Xingqian 2's to Situ. If anything were to happen, Mu Qinghe would definitely find trouble with him. Thinking of this, Jian Fengqi gently turned his palm in his sleeves, and light flashed beneath his feet. Just as he was about to rush up, he suddenly felt a biting cold aura flash past him from the side. He immediately became alert and turned his head to look in that direction. A black-robed figure quickly disappeared before his eyes. To Situ to him. Where? Suddenly he was shocked in his heart. This aura seems to be... Why are they here? Jian Fengqi moved. He had a strong urge to chase after Situ Xingqian. Just as he was about to follow Situ Xingqian caught sight of the fire again. Situ Xingqian stopped, turned and walked toward Chu Luiyue. Xianhuan paused. He heaved a sigh of relief after making sure that Jian Fengqi didn't follow him. He had been secretly following Chu Luiyue the whole time. The most important mission of the 13U Guard was to protect Her Highness. Now that Her Highness had reunited with Her Highness and the rest of the 13U Guard wasn't around, he took on this responsibility again. He was good at hiding. That was why he hadn't been discovered after following Situ Xingqian for so long. But when he saw that Her Highness was in danger, he was worried and accidentally leaked his aura, which was detected by Jian Fengqi. Fortunately, Situ Xingqian didn't follow Situ Xingqian. Xianhuan was relieved. He looked at the white fire again and frowned. Her Highness is still a stage 3 warrior. Even though she's stronger than she looks, she's still lacking compared to before. Situ Xingqian's body has been taken over, and her combat power is above that of a stage 6 warrior. Her Highness shouldn't be able to handle it alone. Xianhuan wanted to rush forward, but many people were watching. Once he did, he would be noticed. If he wasn't careful, he would suspect Her Highness's identity. Xianhuan thought for a while. He finally decided to take action when he saw the fire burning more fiercely. No matter what, I have to save Her Highness first. But the moment he took a step forward, he heard a low and calm voice behind him. She can solve this problem by herself. Xianhuan immediately turned around. A tall and slender figure came into view. His gaze froze when he saw the person's face. Princely Rongxiu. If you go out now, you'll bring her a lot of trouble. Don't you know? Rongxiu was wearing a snow-colored brocade shirt and a black cloak. He had one hand behind his back and he stood tall. His thin lips curved up slightly, and he had a faint smile on his face, making him look gentle and graceful. But his eyes and brows had a suppressive aura that couldn't be ignored, making one subconsciously submit to him. Xianhuan stared at Rongxiu without saying a word. He actually didn't know when Rongxiu appeared behind him. Now that the two of them were confronting each other, he actually felt a faint threat from Rongxiu. That was the suppressive aura that only the strong had. From this, it was enough to tell that Rongxiu's skills were definitely above his. The air between the two of them seemed to have frozen, and it was stiff and stagnant. Rongxiu wasn't worried that Xianhuan would see through his skills. During this period, Xianhuan had also been probing around Princely Mansion, so he must have realized that something was amiss. If the 13U guards didn't even have this bit of ability, they didn't need to exist. They would only be a burden to her if they stayed by her side. Just as Xianhuan was hesitating on how to deal with this, a loud sound was suddenly heard. He immediately turned around to look. His pupils shrank. He saw a red flame suddenly rushing out from the burning white flame. In an instant, sparks flew everywhere. With that ball of flame as the center, violent energy crazily swept out in all directions. The road paved with white jade was instantly smashed to smithereens and sent flying everywhere. The crimson flames covered the sky and engulfed the white flames with ease. It was almost a one-sided suppression. A slender and straight figure gradually became clear. Countless pairs of eyes stared at that figure. She walked out slowly, her black hair and clothes fluttering. Her eyes were piercingly cold. She was like the god of death who had walked out from the flames of hell. Everyone who saw this scene sucked in a breath of cold air. That was Chu Luiyue. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 459. Her entire body was burning with scarlet flames. Reflected in her eyes, it became a flickering flame. Her footsteps were neither fast nor slow, but every step she took felt like she was stepping on the crowd's hearts. Jian Fengqi and Elder Yi, who originally wanted to rush over to help her, subconsciously stopped. Xianhuan clenched his fists tightly and tried his best to control the waves in his heart. Her Highness is indeed Her Highness. Even if she's at a disadvantage, she can still survive. How many people in this world can do this? He could not help but turn around to look at Rongxiu, but he did not see any shock on Rongxiu's face. Instead, Rongxiu had a faint smile as if he had already expected all of this. This princely seems to be even more mysterious and powerful than I expected. Situ Xingqian's cold and fierce eyes suddenly cracked, revealing a tinge of shock and panic. For some reason she felt a strong threat from Chu Luiyue. He's just a stage 3 warrior. Where did this suppression and aura come from? Chu Luiyue finally stood still and looked up at Situ Xingqian. She then raised her hand. A ball of crimson flame suddenly condensed in her palm. A terrifying pressure slowly spread out from the fireball. Situ Xingqian felt increasingly uneasy, and her throat became extremely dry. Chu Luiyue stared at her, and his lips suddenly curled up into a smile, but it was extremely cold. She enunciated every word clearly. I hate it when people snatch my things. It was so in the past and it's even more so now. Situ Xingqian's heart suddenly sank and she instinctively retreated. Chu Luiyue remained standing at his original spot, and he quickly waved his arm. Go! The fist-sized fireball immediately flew towards Situ Xingqian. Wherever it passed, a deep rut would appear on the ground. Situ Xingqian was fast, but it was even faster. The crowd only saw a fireball flying across the sky. The next moment, the fireball had already rushed in front of Situ Xingqian. Unable to avoid it, Situ Xingqian simply stopped and clenched her teeth. In the end, Chu Luiyue was only a stage 3 warrior. How strong could he be? She didn't believe that she couldn't even take a blow from Chu Luiyue. Thinking of this, Situ Xingqian rapidly gathered the force in her body, transformed it into a sickle-like blood-colored light blade and flew forward. The blood-red light blade instantly split the fireball into two. Situ Xingqian snorted. That's all? Before she could finish speaking, her expression suddenly froze. Chu Luiyue's smile deepened. Originally, I wanted to do it myself. I didn't expect you to take the initiative. You saved me a lot of effort. Other than Situ Xingqian, nobody else could see that there was a transparent flame hidden in the middle of the red fireball. Chu Luiyue fused the two powers and delivered a fatal blow. The moment Situ Xingqian saw the transparent fire, she widened her eyes in shock. That was, whoosh. Chu Luiyue killed Xingqian and this debt isn't over. Elder Yi was so angry that he laughed. Situ Xingqian already died when she was possessed. If you want to blame someone, you should blame the person who possessed her. Why are you blaming my disciple? If they did it, they would admit it. If they didn't do it, they definitely wouldn't take the blame. The reason why Situ Xingqian was possessed was clearly because she crazily swallowed the bronze cauldron's energy until she summoned that spiritual body. She just reaped what she sowed. If she knew this would happen, why did she do it back then? Elder Zhongye's face turned red and white, and the veins on his forehead and neck popped up as if he was on the verge of breaking down. However, he couldn't say anything to rebut him. This was because he knew deep down that Yi Zhiding was right. However, it was impossible for him to admit it just like that. This is all because of Chu Luiyue. If it weren't for her, Xingqian definitely wouldn't have ended up like this. As he spoke, he directly shouted at Chu Luiyue angrily. Chu Luiyue, a life for a life. I, Zhongyi, and the entire Xing Luo won't let you off. However, Chu Luiyue didn't even look at him. After Situ Xingqian's physical body exploded, she saw a blood-red ray of light quickly darting out. This person is actually planning to escape. Digression. There are 2 more updates later. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 460. That ball of red shot into the air and tore a hole in the deep Xianxia. The red-tailed flood dragon let out an angry roar. But that ball of red pierced through its tail. Crush. The huge deep Xianxia was completely broken. It turned into countless streaks of light and scattered in all directions. It looked like that thing was about to escape. Chu Luiyue's heart tightened. Just as she was about to chase after it, a silver sword suddenly pierced through the air. The sound of the sword was like thunder. When it entered her ears, it seemed to reach straight to her heart. Chu Luiyue seemed to have sensed something and looked up. She saw that the sword drew a bright arc in the air and quickly pierced toward that ball of red light. Clang! The sword pierced the ground and directly nailed that thing to death. Chu Liyue's eyes flashed. A normal sword could not possibly nail a spirit body, especially one that was rather powerful. It was obvious that the pressure from the long sword was suppressing him. She was very familiar with the aura on it. She looked in the direction of the sword and instantly met a pair of deep eyes. Her heart suddenly felt like it had been hit by something soft. It was indeed him. However, this feeling did not last long because she immediately realized that the person standing beside Rong Xiu was Qi Han. These two people were actually together? Chu Liyue's heart instantly skipped a few beats. Rong Xiu and Qi Han. What did they say? Did they know each other's identities? Rong Xiu was easy to deal with, but what about Qi Han? Rong Xiu was very resourceful. If he really wanted to know something, Chu Liyue was full of doubts. The atmosphere between Rong Xiu and Qi Han became tense again. Why did you suddenly attack? Qi Han suddenly turned around and questioned in a deep voice. Just now, it was Rong Xiu who said that Her Highness could handle everything by herself. That was why he suppressed the worry in his heart and did not rush forward. But in the blink of an eye, Rong Xiu was caught off guard and attacked. Rong Xiu glanced at Qi Han and smiled faintly. Because this prince is her fiancé. So calm and collected. So self-righteous. Qi Han's eyes widened as he suddenly realized something. You did it on purpose? In that case, Rong Xiu naturally became the first person to help His Highness. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. This prince is only thinking for you. His tone was light as if he didn't think of anything else. Qi Han did not speak for a long time. Rong Xiu's words made sense. Now that Her Highness had not yet returned to the Tianling dynasty, if Her Highness's plan failed because of him, then he could only apologize with his death. But Rong Xiu was obviously selfish. There won't be a next time. Qi Han said coldly. Rong Xiu's eyebrows moved slightly and his smile deepened. You is my fiancé, so this is what I should do. Qi Han clenched his fists. If he didn't know that Her Highness really liked Prince Li, he would definitely have attacked by now. He really didn't know what Her Highness saw in him. Seeing that Qi Han and Rong Xiu seemed to be talking about something, Chu Liyue was even more curious. However, she was quite a distance away from them, so she couldn't hear anything at all. She made up her mind to clean up the mess here as soon as possible and then find the two of them to clarify things. Thinking of this, she walked to the side of the long sword and surrounded the soul with flames. A cry of agony could be heard instantly. Chu Liyue glanced at the small fireball and was surprised to find that the person's aura was rapidly weakening. The hellfire of the heavenly square cauldron can burn everything in the world, especially this soul. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice suddenly echoed in her heart. As long as it is condensed in the heavenly square cauldron, it will disappear completely very soon. Chu Liyue widened her eyes slightly. Really? Then aren't you also? The legendary three-eyed eagle's physical body was destroyed, and now only a soul was left. However, it had also stayed in here for thousands of years, hadn't it? How can such a lowly person be compared to my race? The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice was filled with undisguised pride. Chu Liyue thought that it made sense. After all, the legendary three-eyed eagle was a divine beast, so ordinary cultivators naturally couldn't compare. Although this cultivator seemed to have some background, you want his power? From the scream just now, she could already tell that this seemed to be a middle-aged man. The legendary three-eyed eagle was silent for a moment before finally admitting. That's right. The power in his soul can help me recover my cultivation. Chu Liyue chuckled lightly. He was quite honest. Ever since she discussed with the legendary three-eyed eagle to help it last time, the relationship between them was not as tense as before. In her opinion, it was a good thing. With a thought, she called the fireball back into her body and threw the soul into the heavenly square cauldron. The moment that scarlet ball appeared, endless transparent karmic fire surged up. It completely drowned it. The cries of pain became even more mournful, but they soon became weaker. Chu Liyue said in her heart, let's keep him alive first. She might be able to get something out of him later. Whether it was the bronze cauldron, the sheepskin scroll, or his reaction when he saw the dagger that Rong Xiu gave her. Chu Liyue pulled out the long sword. Suddenly her shoulders sank. It was Tuanzi who rushed over. Chu Liyue smiled and patted its head. From the corner of her eye, she saw that Xuanhuan was still hesitating on the spot. Its eyes would occasionally drift to the long sword in her hand. Xuanhuan, thank you for today. Chu Liyue roughly knew what it was thinking, so she couldn't help but smile and walk over. Xuanhuan then leaned in front of her. Its gaze swept across her wrist, and it revealed a tinge of heartache as it went closer and gently licked it. Chu Liyue's heart warmed up. It's just a flesh wound. I'll be fine after some rest. Hung Long. A sudden clap of thunder came from the dark clouds. In the direction of Qinghe Hall, a figure shot up to the sky. Chu Liyue focused her gaze and was instantly stunned. That person is actually Emperor Jiawen. The key is that he seems to be breaking through to peak stage 6. Digression. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 461. Vigorous origin power surged around his body, and the seal above his head had almost completely disappeared. Chu Liyue previously knew that Emperor Jiawen wasn't weak, but he didn't expect him to be this strong. The current him has actually reached the peak of stage 6. But he hasn't stopped. A ridiculous guess suddenly surfaced in Chu Liyue's mind. If the seal completely disappears and Emperor Jiawen's abilities break through again, as if to prove my guess, the surrounding heaven and earth force crazily surged into Emperor Jiawen's body as the last stroke on the seal gradually disappeared. The aura on his body was still constantly strengthening. If Chu Liyue was already like this, what about the other people who didn't know anything? When Emperor Jiawen's figure appeared in midair and revealed his true cultivation level, almost everyone was stunned. That's His Majesty? It really is His Majesty. Wasn't he escorted to Qinghe Hall previously? Why is he, stage 6 warrior? His Majesty is actually a stage 6 warrior? The crowd discussed fervently, and the last sentence finally woke them up. The few family heads standing at one side exchanged glances and fell into an eerie silence. This happened too suddenly and it was too horrifying. Everyone in country Yaoqin knew that Emperor Jiawen's cultivation talent could barely be considered not bad. Compared to a real genius, it wasn't worth mentioning. In addition to the many years of living like a prince, one didn't need to think to know that Emperor Jiawen's combat skills were very weak. Even just a moment ago the patriarchs were thinking the same thing. If not, Emperor Jiawen wouldn't have lost so quickly when Rongjio barged in, and he wouldn't have been in such a pathetic state. But now, it seemed like the rich strength and formidable suppression clearly came from Emperor Jiawen's body. This meant that he was different from Situ Xingqian, who kept absorbing strength to break through. He was clearly hiding his true strength. But now he was finally able to display his true strength. Someone suddenly asked, "What's the third prince's matter? Where's the third prince?" The crowd was suddenly jolted awake. Rongjio just went to find Emperor Jiawen. Who would have thought that things would take a 180-degree turn in such a short period of time? Rongjio was clearly at a disadvantage now. Even if he had outstanding battle achievements, he was definitely not a match for a rank 6 warrior. In actual fact, Rongjio was in a better state than the crowd had imagined, as he was only slightly injured. When he arrived outside Qinghe Hall, he coincidentally saw Emperor Jiawen cultivating. Just as he was about to enter, Emperor Jiawen rushed up to the sky and didn't even care about him. That minor injury was only caused by the shockwaves of energy. However, the shock in his heart was 10,000 times heavier than that. He looked up at Emperor Jiawen, whose abilities kept increasing, and tightly knitted his brows as many emotions flashed across his eyes. Shock, doubt, disbelief. After a while he suddenly laughed. Wei Lin, who was following closely behind, immediately asked, "Your Highness, are you all right?" Rongjio shook his head and laughed even louder, but there was no smile in his eyes. So this was his imperial father. It turned out that what he had seen all these years was just an illusion. He thought that he knew a lot about his father, but in the end he realized that he knew nothing at all. That man had become a completely different person. No, or rather, he was originally like that. After Emperor Jiawen appeared, the red-tailed flood dragon seemed to become even more anxious and uneasy. It seemed like it wanted to go forward, but it was always hesitant as it looked at Emperor Jiawen with a complicated gaze. Chu Liyue glanced at it, patted Shui, and softly asked, "Why? Why do I feel that the red-tailed flood dragon seems to hate Emperor Jiawen? But at the same time it's a little fearful?" Shui rubbed its head against Chu Liyue's palm and softly whimpered to express its affirmation. Dumpling nodded even more crazily. "It's so obvious. The red-tailed flood dragon clearly wants to get rid of Emperor Jiawen completely. But for some reason it didn't do anything." Chu Liyue was even more confused. This deep Xin formation is country Yaoqin's palace's defensive formation, and the red-tailed flood dragon is suppressed under it. Logically speaking, it should be on the same side as country Yaoqin's royal family. Where did this inexplicable disgust and hatred come from? It can't be because it supported Rongjio's ascension. That has nothing to do with it. At this point, the seal above Emperor Jiawen's head completely disappeared. Emperor Jiawen's violent aura surged. Dark clouds gathered and thunder rumbled. The wind howled. This is the sign of a breakthrough. Chu Luiyue held his breath. Emperor Jiawen is actually going to directly break through and become a stage 7 warrior? Long. Following this loud sound, a silver ray of light suddenly descended from the sky. The dark sky was much brighter because of this ray of light. Then a second ray of light and a third ray of light appeared. It was as if there was a silver waterfall falling from the clouds. A gigantic canopy emitted a dazzling light. A vast suppression descended. Some people couldn't take it anymore and knelt down as they watched this scene agitatedly. Chu Luiyue slowly clenched his fists, and he almost couldn't believe what was happening in front of him. Emperor Jiawen actually summoned Heaven's Canopy. This is the sign that he's about to break through and become a stage 7 warrior. But looking at Emperor Jiawen's expression, he didn't seem surprised at all. It was as if he had long expected all of this. Under countless gazes, Emperor Jiawen slowly raised his hand and reached for Heaven's Canopy. Hold on. A low and lazy voice suddenly sounded. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 462. Emperor Jiawen suddenly paused in his actions, and he abruptly turned around. A tall figure appeared in front of the crowd. He slowly walked over with a casual smile on his devilish face. His eyes were as deep and pure as the night sky, and he was surrounded by an indescribable aura as if he didn't belong to this world. Was Rongxiu. Chu Luiyue widened her eyes slightly. This was because the aura on Rongxiu's body became stronger with every step he took. Upon seeing this scene, the crowd gasped in shock. That's Prince Li? Isn't Prince Li weak and sick all year round? Now he actually broke through to become a stage 3 warrior. No. He's a stage 4 warrior now. In the face of this sudden change, almost everyone was stunned on the spot. But Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Is Rongxiu planning to show his true abilities? Why? Emperor Jiawen stared closely at Rongxiu and his face changed a few times. You're not sick. But Rongxiu didn't immediately answer his question. Instead he walked straight to Chu Luiyue and stood still. He looked down, held her hand, and gently slid his fingers across her broken wrist. A warm and strong force instantly entered her body. Your Highness, actually, you don't have to worry about... Chu Luiyue originally wanted to say that he didn't have to worry about this injury since she was a celestial physician herself. She had already treated it briefly before, and it would heal on its own after some time. But when she met Rongxiu's deep and gentle gaze, her heart warmed and she swallowed her words. Sorry I'm late. Chu Luiyue lightly shook her head. Xuanhuan, who was hiding in the dark, looked even colder. Leave the rest to me. Upon hearing Rongxiu's words, Chu Luiyue felt a little uneasy. What are you planning to do? He had painstakingly hidden it for so many years, so why did he have to reveal it all today? Rongxiu's thin lips curved slightly. I'm just putting an end to it. Chu Luiyue's heart tingled as he instinctively looked up at Emperor Jiawen, who was in midair. A moment later, she gently held his hand. All right. While the two of them were talking, Rongxiu's aura had already broken through to a stage 5 warrior. After confirming that Chu Luiyue was fine, Rongxiu turned around to look at Emperor Jiawen. At this point, if Emperor Jiawen still couldn't tell what was going on, he would have wasted his many years on the throne. Rongxiu. You were lying to me all this time? Not only was he not sick, but his cultivation was also extremely outstanding. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have reached this level at his current age. No. Rongxiu did not seem to have stopped. He was about to break through the middle stage of the 5th stage. Rongxiu smiled lightly. I'm just learning from you, father. Haven't you been like this for so many years? Emperor Jiawen was dazed. Then he suddenly realized something as shock flashed across his eyes. Why, you already knew? Rongxiu smiled and didn't say anything, clearly admitting to it. Emperor Jiawen was instantly flustered, and his aura was messy. Even the heaven's canopy in front of him became a little illusory. Since when? What else do you know? Emperor Jiawen's face had a rare look of panic and nervousness. Chu Luiyue squinted his eyes. She had never seen such an expression on Emperor Jiawen's face before. It was as if a secret that had been hidden for many years had suddenly been discovered. It was reasonable for him to be shocked. When the surrounding people saw the current Rongxiu, they also had the same reaction. But where did this nervousness and panic come from? Mother has already passed away for many years. Father, you really don't have to be so worried. Rong Xiu's tone was calm as if he were talking about someone else's matters. Emperor Jiawen felt as if he was struck by lightning. Rong Xiu must have known everything. The anger from being lied to previously suddenly disappeared, and guilt and hatred rapidly surged in Emperor Jiawen's heart. Rong Xiu, what happened back then wasn't what you think it was. I had my reasons back then. It seemed like he wanted to explain himself. However, Rong Xiu wasn't interested in listening. He still smiled gently and lazily, but his eyes seemed to be frozen with a thick layer of ice. The past is the past. If you say this now, Mother won't be able to hear it. As for me, I'm just here today to fulfill Mother's last wish. As he spoke, his cold gaze landed on the item hanging around Emperor Jiawen's neck, and he smiled meaningfully. You still used this item in the end, didn't you? Emperor Jiawen's face quickly darkened. He seemed to have instantly aged by more than 10 years. No, I was forced to. He clenched his fists and his face was filled with conflict and pain. First it was the Empress, then it was Rongjiu. Everyone is betraying me. If I don't retaliate, I'll be completely trapped in this palace. My years of hard work will go to waste. How can I accept this? If these people didn't force me to this step, why would I do this? Slight mockery flashed across Rongxiu's face. Some people are always the best at finding excuses for themselves. Emperor Jiawen suddenly thought of something and hurriedly asked, "What did you just say?" "You just said that you want to help her fulfill her last wish. What is it?" "If I can help, I'll definitely do my best." "Father, are you serious?" Rongxiu raised his brows as if he were wavering. Emperor Jiawen harshly nodded. "I'm the one who let her down. I can make it up to her. Mother said that she doesn't want to see you step into heaven's canopy. Especially with her power." Rongxiu's gaze was cold as he said every word clearly. "She wants you to stay here forever and you can't leave even if you die." Translator, Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios mobile users, please browse and read. Chapter 463. The blood on Emperor Jiawen's face instantly drained, and he was as pale as a sheet. He opened his mouth and seemed to have used up all his strength to ask, "What's the matter?" She really said that? She really hates me to the core. "I'll do my best to fulfill Mother's dying wish," said Rongxiu lightly. The conversation between the two of them caused everyone present to be confused. Back then, Emperor Jiawen doted on Consort One a lot, but it seemed like Consort One had a deep hatred for Emperor Jiawen. Everything about Heaven's Canopy was even more mystifying. Why is this Consort One's last wish? A thought suddenly surfaced in Chu Liyue's mind. Could it be that Rongxiu's birth mother is someone from Heaven's Canopy? This is the only way to explain why Rongxiu has such outstanding talent and abilities, as well as the previous battle outside Heaven's Canopy. Emperor Jiawen's expression changed and he seemed to make up his mind in the end as he said solemnly, "Rongxiu, I've let your mother down, but there's nothing I can do about it. Originally, I didn't plan to go to Heaven's Canopy, but I have to go now." Heaven's Canopy was right in front of him. As long as he continued to break through, he could successfully enter. That was a completely different world. After Consort Wan's death, he was filled with regret. He even hid his abilities and did nothing for so many years. Originally, he had wanted to live the rest of his life peacefully, but now, as long as he took a step forward, everything would be different. The scales in his heart had already tilted to one side. However, Rongxiu was unmoved and smiled faintly. "It's fine if you want to go as long as you return that item to me." Emperor Jiawen's expression changed. "You want to snatch this item away? It originally belonged to Mother. How can you say that I snatched it away?" Slight mockery flashed across Rongxiu's eyes. Besides, Mother never agreed to leave this item to me. Back then he had used all sorts of methods to obtain this item. Rather than saying that he had snatched it, it was more likely that he had snatched it from his mother. After being exposed by Rongxiu, Emperor Jiawen was very embarrassed, and he flew into a rage. "Rongxiu, over the years we have never mistreated you. Is this how you treat me?" He had thought that Rongxiu was born with a weak body. He had even spent a long time looking for a celestial physician to treat him. In the end it was just a scam. Rongxiu's eyebrows moved slightly and he suddenly laughed. "Imperial Father, if you knew about this earlier, would you still treat me like this?" Emperor Jiawen suddenly choked, and his face flushed red, but he couldn't say a single word. Rongxiu's expression became even more sarcastic. If Emperor Jiawen knew that there was nothing wrong with his body and that he was very talented, he would have done something to him long ago. How could there be such a day? Without thinking, he dodged to the side. He hurriedly looked over and realized that the one attacking him was actually the red-tailed flood dragon. When the red-tailed flood dragon didn't hit its target, it became even more irritable. Half of the sky reverberated with its low and forceful roar. The spectators on the ground were also affected by the strong suppression, and their expressions changed. Those who weren't strong enough even directly vomited blood. However, that suppression didn't land on Chu Luiyue. There seemed to be an invisible barrier that blocked the red-tailed flood dragon's suppression. Chu Luiyue surveyed her surroundings and blinked. So many people were affected, but why wasn't she affected? Then her gaze landed on Xuanhuan. I'm a legendary fiend. What's a mere red-tailed flood dragon to me? The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice suddenly sounded. Chu Luiyue was enlightened. She had forgotten about this. The legendary three-eyed eagle was in my dantian. Even though outsiders didn't know about it, fiends were very sensitive to such things. That red-tailed flood dragon is the fiend guarding country Yao Chen's palace. Why would it attack Emperor Jianghu? Chu Luiyue softly muttered. Just as she was secretly confused, that sword aura had already landed on Emperor Jianghu. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from iUN. Chapter 464. Emperor Jianghu originally wanted to avoid it, but the sword aura was too fast. The cold aura brushed past his neck. Kacha. The item hanging on his neck suddenly broke. It flew toward Rongxiao. Emperor Jianghu was shocked and immediately reached out to snatch it, but he still missed it by a hair's breadth. Just as he was about to chase after it, the red-tailed flood dragon rushed forward again. It swung its tail and slapped Emperor Jianghu. Emperor Jianghu was caught off guard, and his back was harshly hit. His body flew out uncontrollably. At this point, that item had already landed in Rongxiao's hands. Chu Luiyue focused on it and saw that it was actually a black bone necklace with a ring hanging on it. The ring was bronze in color, and there seemed to be mysterious black patterns carved on it, making it look very mysterious. Rongxiao looked down at the ring, and his long black eyelashes covered his eyes. He pressed his thin lips against each other, and his jade-like chin seemed to tense up for a moment. His face didn't reveal any expression, but Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly ached. Rongxiao, return the item to me. Emperor Jianghu forcefully stabilized his body and hurriedly looked at Rongxiao. Rongxiao's expression changed slightly as he flipped his wrist and kept the ring. If Mother was still around, she definitely wouldn't agree to let me return the item to you. You. Emperor Jianghu originally wanted to argue, but he couldn't say anything when he met Rongxiao's deep and penetrating eyes. It was as if every word he said would cause him to be mocked even more deeply. Just as he was feeling very conflicted, the red-tailed flood dragon rushed forward again. The man and the fiend were in a fight. Emperor Jianghu's current strength was at the peak of stage 6, and the red-tailed flood dragon was a 7th-grade fiend. Logically speaking, they should be able to fight to a draw. But very quickly, Emperor Jianghu was at a disadvantage and he kept retreating. More importantly, the force in his body seemed to be continuously spreading in all directions, and his aura gradually weakened. Not long after, his level actually dropped by a stage. But this was only the beginning. As time passed, the red-tailed flood dragon left more and more wounds on his body. In the end, Emperor Jianghu couldn't retaliate at all. His realm had even fallen below that of a rank 4 warrior. Bang! Emperor Jianghu finally couldn't take it anymore and fell to the ground harshly. In an instant, dust flew everywhere. He clutched his chest and coughed violently a few times. His mouth was full of blood and he was on the verge of death. Rongxiao did not seem to be interested in these things. He turned around and walked towards Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue could not help but ask in a low voice, "That red-tailed flood dragon seems to have a grudge against His Majesty?" Rongxiao smiled faintly and said carelessly, "That's right. It once received Mother's grace. Hence, in the end, everything can only be reduced to nothing." Chu Luiyue nodded slightly and looked at the tightly locked door. I wonder how their discussion went. Emperor Jianghu had already been locked up, and the red-tailed flood dragon was suppressed in the deep Xian formation again. The mess from before was more or less cleaned up by now. On the surface, everything seemed to be gradually returning to normal. But everyone knew that the outcome was still in the hands of the two of them. Elder Yi followed his line of sight and let out a long sigh. I didn't expect that after so many years it's still, Chu Luiyue suddenly asked. Emperor Jianghu? Master, did you already know that His Majesty? Elder Yi hesitated for a moment, nodded, and then shook his head. I only knew that His Majesty and Ryue had a falling out back then because he did something wrong to her, but I didn't know why he did it. Who can he blame for ending up in this state? Chu Luiyue thought for a while and asked, did Emperor Jiawen come from country Xingluo? Consort Wan came from heaven's canopy? Elder Yi paused for a moment and smiled bitterly. I'm not sure about this. His Majesty met her by chance when he went out. He only said that she was the orphan of a fallen family, but nobody knows the details. Back then she was doted on, and quite a few people secretly investigated her background, but they didn't find anything. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. If that was the case, it would make sense. Crick. Taiha Palace's door suddenly opened. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 465. Chu Luiyue and Elder Yi looked up at the same time. Not far behind the two of them, the various family heads were all quiet as they looked over. A figure walked out of it. Within a night, country Yao Chen had a shocking change. First, Rongjio rebelled, occupied the imperial city, and forced the emperor to abdicate. Then, country Xingluo's eldest princess, Situ Xingqian, swallowed a strange force and continuously broke through. She tried to kill Chu Luiyue, but she was eventually killed. Finally, Prince Li Rongxiu fought with Emperor Jiawen to take back his birth mother, concubine Wan, and won with one strike. Too many things happened on this day, and they quickly spread throughout the entire imperial city. Nobody thought of keeping the news a secret. In fact, with such a big commotion, it was simply impossible to pretend that nothing had happened. Besides, the fight for the throne had huge implications. All the family heads personally saw everything that happened, so they would definitely tell their family members so that they would know how to deal with the situation. At that moment, everyone in the imperial city was talking about this. Very quickly the latest news came. The third prince, Rongjio, ascended the throne, and Prince Li Rongxiu chose to return to Mingyue Tianshan. As for Emperor Jiawen, he was sent to Qingyi Palace to live out his remaining years as the Emperor Emeritus. Everyone had different opinions about this result. After all, everyone already knew that Rongxiu wasn't really sick. On the contrary, he was very talented in cultivation and he was very capable. Previously, many people guessed that he and Rongjio would fight for the throne. They didn't expect him to return to Mingyue Tianshan. As for Emperor Jiawen, what kind of ending would he have after being forcefully chased down from the throne? However, after Situ Xingqian died, country Xingluo didn't have any reaction, as if they had directly ignored it. Princely Mansion, Bamboo Forest. Chu Luiyue and Rongxiu sat opposite each other with a half-finished chessboard in between them. The wind blew and the bamboo leaves rustled. Rongxiu put down the chess piece in his hand. Do you think that I'm too unreasonable? Chu Luiyue looked up and asked in shock. Your Highness, why do you say that? Rongxiu paused for a while. Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. Is he talking about Emperor Jiawen? Your Highness naturally has your own difficulties and reasons for doing so. Chu Luiyue shook his head gently. As long as your Highness thinks it's right, then it's right. Rongxiu's thin lips slightly raised. He suddenly leaned closer, fixed his eyes on her, and asked jokingly, Your meaning is that no matter what this prince does, you will stand by this prince's side? His voice was low and lazy, and there was a careless smile at the corner of his mouth. Of course. Chu Luiyue looked into his deep eyes and said firmly. Her expression was so serious and sincere. Rongxiu's heart seemed to be hit by something, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. Your Highness is mine. I will naturally protect your Highness. Chu Luiyue smiled, and her eyes curved as if she was joking. However, the gaze in her eyes was firm and unquestionable. Rongxiu knew that she meant what she said. He kept quiet for a while and suddenly said, Actually, this isn't quite accurate. What? Chu Luiyue was dazed. Rongxiu's long fingers lightly tapped on the chessboard as if he was smiling. I'm not considered your man yet. His voice was exceptionally low, and his last syllable was slightly dragged out. When it landed in her ears, it was as if something was lightly scratching her heart. Chu Luiyue suddenly reacted and couldn't help but curse in her heart. Demon. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you, Your Highness. I'm going to the Tianling dynasty now, and you're also going back to Mingyue Tianshan. I'm afraid we won't be able to see each other for a while. Rongxiu raised his brows slightly. It seems like you're in a hurry. Chu Luiyue said faintly, You can't be in a hurry. You've already prepared everything for the wedding. At this point, Rongxiu felt a little regretful. I've indeed planned to get married long ago, but too many things happened in between. I didn't expect it to be delayed until now. Now, both of them had things to do, so they definitely wouldn't be able to get married in time. Seeing that Rongxiu seemed to be really disappointed, Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. In any case, there's an engagement. It doesn't make much of a difference whether we get married earlier or later, right? Xiao looked at her meaningfully and smiled faintly. Of course there's a difference. I've been waiting for too long. A trace of doubt flashed across Chu Liyue's heart. It had only been a few months since they first met. Why did Xiao sound like he had been waiting for a long time? But as long as it's you, I can keep waiting. Sensing Xiao's deep and gentle gaze, Chu Liyue sighed softly. Actually, the road ahead was full of dangers and difficulties. She didn't know when she would see him again. Your Highness, are you really going back to Mingyue Tianshan? The matters in the imperial capital have already been settled. There's no need to continue staying. Then let's get married when I return from the Tianling dynasty. How about it? Xiao's expression turned serious. After a moment, he bent down and kissed Chu Liyue's forehead. Okay. His voice was light, but it contained too much. Patience, tolerance, waiting, love, and trust. Chu Liyue lowered her eyes and thought for a long time. Finally, she seemed to have made up her mind. Your Highness, I have something to tell you. Xiao nodded and pretended to listen. Chu Liyue's lips were tightly pursed. She looked into Xiao's eyes and said word by word, I'm going to the Tianling dynasty this time. The date of my return is not set. My enemy is there. Digression. Aha Kavinka is dead. Aha 4 updates today, 6 updates tomorrow. Aha happy 520 mobile users. Please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 466. The blood drained from Emperor Jiawen's face, and he turned extremely pale. He opened his mouth and seemed to use all the strength in his body to ask, did she really say that? She really hated him to the core. Did she really say that? I will naturally do my best to fulfill my mother's request before she died. Xiao said indifferently. The conversation between the two of them left almost everyone at the scene confused. Emperor Jiawen had doted on concubine Wan a lot in the past. He had doted on her a lot. But now, it seemed that concubine Wan hated Emperor Jiawen deeply. Furthermore, everything about the Sky Screen realm was even more confusing. Why was this concubine Wan's last wish? Chu Liyue suddenly had a guess. Could it be that Xiao's birth mother was someone from the Sky Screen realm? That was the only explanation for Xiao's outstanding talent and strength, as well as the battle outside the Sky Screen realm. Emperor Jiawen's expression changed several times. Finally, he seemed to have made up his mind. He said in a low voice, Xiao, I have let your mother down. However, since things have come to this, there is nothing I can do. Originally, I had no intention of going to the Sky Screen realm. However, I have no choice but to go now. The Sky Screen realm was right in front of him. As long as he continued to break through, he would be able to enter it successfully. That was a completely different world. After concubine Wan's death, he had been filled with regret. He had even hidden his strength from then on, doing nothing for so many years. Originally, he had thought of living a peaceful life. However, if he took a step forward now, everything would be different. The balance in his heart had already tilted to one side. Xiao was unmoved. He only smiled faintly. It's fine if you want to go as long as you return that thing to me. Emperor Jiawen's expression changed. You want to snatch that thing away? That thing originally belonged to my mother. How can you say that you want to snatch it away? A hint of mockery flashed across Xiao's eyes. Furthermore, his mother had never agreed to leave this thing to him. Back then he had used all sorts of methods to obtain this thing. Rather than snatching it away, he had snatched it from his mother. Having been exposed by Xiao, Emperor Jiawen was extremely embarrassed. In the end, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. Xiao, for so many years, I have never treated you unfairly. Is this how you treat me? He had thought that Xiao was born with a weak body, and he had been distressed for a long time because of this. He had found countless doctors to treat him. In the end, it was just a scam. Xiao's brows moved slightly and he suddenly laughed. Imperial Father, if you had known about this earlier, would you still treat your son like this? Emperor Jiawen suddenly choked. His face flushed red, but he couldn't say a single word. Xiao's expression became more and more mocking. If Emperor Jiawen had known that there was nothing wrong with his body and that his talent was excellent, he would have made a move on him long ago. How could there be a day like this? The so-called good was only built on the basis that he wouldn't pose any threat to him. Just like how he had always said how much he loved his mother, but in the end, wasn't he the one who hurt her the most and even caused her to die of depression? In Xiao's opinion, Emperor Jiawen's words were simply a joke. When he saw Rong Xiu's penetrating gaze, Emperor Jianghu swallowed his words of defense. Finally, all the expression on his face disappeared, leaving only a cold and hard expression. You want to stop me? Let's see if you have the ability to do so. After saying that, he once again began to devour the surrounding heaven and earth energy. The seal had already disappeared and all the energy in his body had already surged out. As long as he broke through the final barrier of a stage 7 martialist, he could successfully enter the sky screen realm. Rong Xiu raised his hand. Buzz! The sound of a sword instantly rang out. The silver long sword that had been stabbed into the ground earlier quickly flew over and landed in his hand. His feet shifted slightly, both hands gripping the sword hilt tightly as he stared intently at Emperor Jianghu. The sword rose. The sword fell. An incomparably tyrannical sword aura swept across. The jade slabs on the ground shattered and flew into the air. Then they were silently annihilated into dust by the terrifying sword aura. When Emperor Jianghu saw Rong Xiu make a move, he already had a bad feeling. When he saw that sword aura heading straight for him, his heart skipped a beat. Rong Xiu's strength had actually reached a stage 6 martialist. When cultivators were breaking through, they often needed to focus. The higher the level, the more it was so. Emperor Jianghu originally planned to set up an enchantment to block all attacks outside. But the moment Rong Xiu made a move, he knew that it would not work. Helpless, he could only stop temporarily and turn around to receive Rong Xiu's attack. Mountains and rivers fall. A blue origin power surged out from his palm. Then a second, a third. The surging origin power was like streams, quickly fusing together, turning into a surging river. Vaguely, one could even hear the sound of surging water. That river-like origin power poured down in torrents. The piercingly cold sword aura arrived in an instant. The two forces collided fiercely. In an instant, that sword aura sank into the river, splashing water everywhere. Emperor Jianghu secretly heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. But in the next moment he saw that the blue river suddenly split in the middle. Completely split into two parts. The expression on Emperor Jianghu's face suddenly froze. The attack on that sword aura did not seem to be weakened at all. The power contained in the sword chi was even stronger than he had expected. Following that sword aura went all the way up. The tyrannical aura caused Emperor Jianghu's entire body to tense up. Swish! His origin power was completely pierced. That sword aura headed straight for his face. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and quickly retreated. But at this moment, he suddenly felt as if a biting cold wind was attacking his back. Without thinking, he dodged to the side. Hurriedly looking to the side, he found that the one attacking him was actually the scarlet-tailed flood dragon. Missing its attack, the scarlet-tailed flood dragon became even more irritable. Half the sky reverberated with its deep and powerful roar. The onlookers on the ground also felt this powerful pressure, and their expressions all changed. Some of the weaker ones even directly vomited blood. But that pressure did not fall on Chu Liyue's body. Imperceptibly, there seemed to be a transparent barrier that blocked the scarlet-tailed flood dragon's pressure outside. Chu Liyue looked around and blinked. So many people were affected, but why was she the only one not? After that, her gaze descended onto Xue. I am a divine beast. What is a mere scarlet-tailed flood dragon to me? The three-eyed godly eagle's voice suddenly sounded. Chu Liyue suddenly understood. She had forgotten about this. The three-eyed godly eagle was in her dantian. Although outsiders did not know about it, demonic beasts were very sensitive to such things. That scarlet-tailed flood dragon is the guardian demonic beast of the Yaoqian kingdom. Why would it attack Emperor Jianghu now? Chu Liyue murmured. Just as she was feeling puzzled, the sword chi had already landed on Emperor Jianghu's body. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the website. Chapter 467. It was quiet in the bamboo forest. Only the sound of the bamboo leaves rustling in the wind could be heard. Chu Liyue felt that everything around her seemed to have stopped in an instant. Only the eyebrows of the person in front of her were exceptionally clear. Her voice was light and seemed to dissipate in the wind in an instant. However, she knew that Rong Xiu had heard it. This was her biggest secret. She originally thought that it would be difficult to say it out loud. However, in the face of their impending separation, she realized that it was much easier to be honest with Rong Xiu than she had imagined. This was because she really wanted to continue being with him. Rong Xiu's eyes seemed to surge with emotions. After a moment he looked into her eyes and said, "If you can't go back, I'll go." Chu Liyue was suddenly stunned. "Your Highness, why don't you ask me why I have enemies in the Tianling dynasty?" 10 years ago, she was just an abandoned good-for-nothing daughter of a declining aristocratic family in country Yaoqian. Logically speaking, it was impossible for her to have anything to do with the Tianling dynasty. However, Rongxiu didn't seem surprised or curious. The corners of his lips curled up slightly as he smiled. I only care about whether your revenge is satisfying. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Rongxiu leaned close to her ear. His warm breath sprayed on her ear, causing it to heat up slightly. Wherever you goes, I will go too. The sky was clear and there were no clouds for thousands of miles. Jian Fengqi flew on his sword, and Chu Luiyue stood behind him. Are you really leaving just like that? Jian Fengqi glanced at Chu Luiyue. You won't be able to see your father and fiancé for a long time after this. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly. Young Master Jian, can you help to bring them to the Tianling dynasty? Jian Fengqi immediately said, no. The Tianling dynasty's control was very strict. Everyone's identity had to go through heavy screening. In particular, the place they were heading to this time was the imperial capital of the Tianling dynasty, Xiling. Even if they could cross the heavens canopy and enter the western mausoleum, they would not be able to do so without a suitable reason and identity. Chu Luiyue shrugged. This time, her future was unknown, so it would be more convenient for her to go alone. Jian Fengqi glanced at her from head to toe, and the corners of his mouth suddenly curled up into an evil smile. However, that princely really hid himself well. With his strength, entering heaven's canopy shouldn't be a problem. Chu Luiyue glanced at him. Jian Fengqi seemed to be very interested in Rongxiu and kept talking about him along the way. She shook her head again. He has his own plans. Seeing that Chu Luiyue was still as impenetrable as ever, the smile on Jian Fengqi's face finally disappeared, and he snorted. I really don't know what you're thinking being together with such a scheming person. Chu Luiyue couldn't be bothered with him. The two didn't speak again. After about an hour they finally stopped at a mountain peak. Jian Fengqi jumped down and waved his sleeve lightly. Dust rose into the air. A teleportation array appeared in front of them. Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed slightly, and she also jumped down and walked to Jian Fengqi's side. This is the teleportation array that I used to come here. Jian Fengqi lifted his chin. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. This mountain peak was southeast of the imperial capital, and it was deserted. How could there be a teleportation array here? Seeing the shock and confusion on Chu Luiyue's face, Jian Fengqi thought that she was curious about the teleportation array, so he explained. This teleportation array can quickly send us to heaven's canopy. But to reach the Tianling dynasty, we still have to pass through 2 more teleportation arrays. Chu Luiyue lightly nodded. Other than cultivators who were trying to break through to become stage 7 warriors and could take the initiative to summon heaven's canopy, everyone else had to personally go to where heaven's canopy was before they could enter. However, she was curious about something else. This teleportation array looks quite old. Jian Fengqi touched his chin. That's right. It also doesn't look like it's commonly used. I know about this because Mu Qing has said that we can go from here. Actually, I was also very curious when I came here. There's actually a teleportation array that connects to heaven's canopy here. Emperor Zhouwen had been to the Tianling dynasty before, so there was such a teleportation array in the imperial capital. However, it was a little strange for it to appear in such a place. Maybe it was built by cultivators in the past. Jian Fengqi didn't pay much attention to the teleportation array. As he spoke, he gathered force in his palm and slapped it on the teleportation array. A silver light flashed and the teleportation array was activated. The two of them instantly disappeared from their original spot. The surroundings were dark, and Chu Luiyue could only hear the sound of the endless space flowing past her ears. Luckily, Jian Fengqi had set up a barrier, so she didn't feel too much pressure. After some time, a ray of light finally appeared in front of her. Jian Fengqi said, "It's coming out soon." Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly tightened. The next moment, the sky brightened up. She only felt a huge force coming from behind and pushing her and Jian Fengqi out. She staggered a step before she steadied herself. This is the heaven's canopy that the Tianling dynasty is in charge of guarding. Jian Fengqi raised his hand and pointed in front. Chu Luiyue's body stiffened and she slowly looked up. At this point the two of them were standing on a cliff. Below the cliff was an endless, turbulent black-blue ocean. In the distance, where the ocean met the sky, a gigantic heaven's canopy fell from the dark sky. Thousands of streams of light flashed, like a galaxy in the distance. The vast and boundless pressure of the heavenly Tao poured out, almost covering the entire world. And in the middle of the heaven's canopy, there was a group of soldiers wearing black armor and holding long swords. They were lined up neatly in a row. Even from such a distance, Chu Luiyue could still clearly feel the murderous aura of those soldiers. In the entire Tianling dynasty, only the most elite and powerful soldiers were qualified to guard the heaven's canopy. Therefore all of these people were 1 in a million strong. They stood there, dignified and solemn, as if they had already merged with the world. Chu Luiyue's hands trembled slightly in her sleeves, and the blood in her body seemed to freeze in an instant. But there seemed to be something burning in her chest and abdomen about to explode. How familiar this scene was. In 1645 of the Tianling dynasty, she had just become of marriageable age and had personally come to inspect this place as the empress. At that time, thousands of soldiers had welcomed her respectfully. Their military flags had fluttered, and the honor guard had spread for hundreds of miles. At that time, she had never imagined that one day she would come here again in such a manner. Jian Fengqi saw that Chu Luiyue's expression seemed a little off. He couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong?" Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed and a perfect smile appeared on her face. "I'm just a little nervous. Young Master Jian, don't worry." Jian Fengqi nodded. After all, it was her first time here. It was normal to be nervous. "This is the Tianling dynasty's heaven's canopy. Who are you?" A dignified voice came from afar. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 468. Jian Fengqi threw out a token which floated in mid-air. A faint pressure spread from it. Jian Fengqi raised his voice. "Jian Fengqi from Dragon Teeth Mountain. So it's young Master Jian." At the mention of Jian Fengqi's voice, the soldier's voice immediately became much more respectful. "May I know who is beside you? Take out the token that Mu Qinghe left for you," Jian Fengqi said softly. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and took out the token. It also floated in the air. "Chu Luiyue from country Yaochen." Her voice sounded as clear and calm as usual, but in reality her palms were already wet. After verifying that their tokens were correct, that person said, "Vice Admiral Mu has already instructed that the two of you can enter together. Please." With that, a wave rippled above heaven's canopy. Immediately after, a long bridge extended from heaven's canopy and stopped in front of the two of them. Jian Fengqi and Chu Luiyue looked at each other. "Let's go." With that, he took the lead and walked onto the long bridge. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and followed closely behind him. The two of them walked on the long bridge and got closer and closer to the entrance. Chu Luiyue could already see the faces of the soldiers clearly. Looking at the entrance in front of her, her heart beat faster and faster. "Young Master Jian, Miss Chu, please." At this moment, a wave suddenly came from afar. Chu Luiyue turned around and saw two figures appear on the cliff. It was a man and a woman who looked very young. Seeing the long bridge in front of them, the man laughed loudly. "The bridge just appeared. Yunji, we will definitely make it this time. You're not worried about being late, are you?" The woman chuckled. "Yunji has never been here before, so it's inevitable that I'm a little nervous. Cousin, why are you making fun of me? Besides, I'm just worried that I'll delay you." The man laughed. "There's still some time before the deadline. Don't worry. Let's go. This time I'll show you the Tianling dynasty." The woman's face was filled with anticipation. The man tossed out the token in his hand. "I, Qin Shiyuan, disciple of the Soaring Cloud sect, have brought Zhao Yunji of the Suiyang Empire with me." Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes. So they were from the Soaring Cloud sect. From the looks of it, the woman was like her, brought here because she possessed the Daijing Yuan meridian. She had thought that only the Black Cavalry, including Mu Qinghe, would do this. She did not expect the Soaring Cloud sect to send someone as well. It seemed that the scale of this matter had far exceeded her expectations. After Qin Shiyuan finished speaking, he put away the token and walked towards the bridge in high spirits. "Hold on." Jian Fengqi suddenly opened his mouth and said lazily, "This Lin Xiao was specially summoned for me and Luyu." The people of the Soaring Cloud sect were shameless, but he did not expect that the people they brought were also like this. Chu Luiyue held her breath and walked in through the entrance. The flowing light of heaven's canopy swept across her body, as if it wanted to see through her completely in an instant. Buzz. A faint sound was suddenly heard. There was a sudden movement in heaven's canopy. Chu Luiyue was shocked. This movement seemed to be because of the water droplets in her body. The surrounding soldiers noticed this movement and immediately looked at Chu Luiyue with vigilance. Even Jian Fengqi looked back. Chu Luiyue's mind moved, and she forcefully suppressed the movement of the water droplets. The strange sound also disappeared in an instant. What happened just now? The soldiers on guard stared at Chu Luiyue, their eyes full of suspicion. Chu Luiyue shook her head innocently. I don't know either. Jian Fengqi looked up at heaven's canopy and frowned slightly. It should be a common movement. Only then did the soldiers relax a little. Sometimes heaven's canopy would indeed be like this. If there was really something wrong with Chu Luiyue, the movement would not have disappeared instantly. Seeing that the soldiers were still suspicious, Jian Fengqi smiled and said, "Don't tell me you don't trust the person Mu Qinghe chose?" The soldiers' expressions changed slightly. Of course not. The two of you, please. Chu Luiyue felt as if a rock had been lifted from her heart. She walked forward and crossed heaven's canopy. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 469. After passing through heaven's canopy, the sky was bright. Chu Luiyue raised her hand to cover her eyes. After getting used to the light, she looked up ahead. Above the blue sky, bluish-purple clouds piled up and flowed with the wind. The black land was vast and boundless. At a glance, it was boundless. Where the sky and the earth met, there was a line of white. Behind the clouds, a bright orange-yellow color appeared, plating the clouds with a layer of warm light. On the ground, several teleportation portals were arranged in rows and slowly rotating. An indescribable pressure spread out. Chu Luiyue held her breath slightly. All of this scene was so familiar. But when she came again, she was in a different state of mind. Even her identity was completely different. This is the northern border of the Tianling dynasty. There are a total of 108 teleportation portals, all of which lead to different places in the Tianling dynasty. Jian Fengqi walked over from behind and stood beside Chu Luiyue. He pointed at the largest teleportation portal in front of them and smiled. The largest one goes to the imperial capital of the Tianling dynasty, Xiling. It can teleport thousands of people at once. Building a teleportation portal usually required the cooperation of mystic cultivators and martial artists, and it consumed a lot of energy. Ordinary teleportation portals could only teleport about 10 people. Portals of this scale were extremely rare. Even in the entire Tianling dynasty, there were only 5 portals. Each one consumed an unimaginable amount of manpower and resources. Chu Luiyue exhaled softly. She came from the capital to inspect heaven's canopy through this teleportation portal. Of course, she was very familiar with it. How is it? Is it like what you imagined? Jian Fengqi asked teasingly. In Jian Fengqi's opinion, with Chu Luiyue's background, she must be full of yearning and fantasizing about the Tianling dynasty. Not to mention people outside heaven's canopy, even those who had seen many things in heaven's canopy were often shocked by this scene when they came here for the first time. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up and she nodded. The Tianling dynasty is indeed worthy of its reputation. Jian Fengqi raised his eyebrows. That's nothing. When you get to the West Hill, you'll know how much fun there is in this world. Chu Luiyue gave him a meaningful look. She had no interest in the fun that he was talking about. Jian Fengqi inexplicably felt guilty and coughed while holding his fist. Cough, it's getting late. Let's hit the road first. As he spoke, he walked towards the teleportation array. However, right at this moment, a gust of cold wind suddenly assaulted them from behind. 2 figures quickly flashed past. He rushed right in front of them. With a leap, he landed on the teleportation array. Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes. They were the 2 people who had been following them. Qin Shiyuan ignored Chu Luiyue and Zhao Yunji and said loudly to Zhao Yunji, "Yunji, don't worry. Using this teleportation array, we can reach Xiling very quickly. We will definitely make it in time." Zhao Yunji's beautiful eyes widened and she couldn't hide the shock on her face. I didn't expect there to be such a large teleportation array in this world. Not only is this teleportation array big, it's also very safe. There are hundreds of Xian arrays set up inside, enough to block all the spatial turbulence outside. It's no different from walking outside. Qin Shiyuan said lightly, but there was a hint of pride on his face. The first sect master of the Lingyun sect personally participated in the construction of this teleportation array. Zhao Yunji's eyes lit up when she heard that. She said with admiration, "The Lingyun sect is indeed amazing. Cousin, you were able to enter and be accepted as the sect master's disciple. You are truly a dragon among men." Qin Shiyuan felt refreshed, and there was unconcealable pride in his eyes. "When we reach Xiling, I will personally bring you to the Lingyun sect to take a look." "Thank you, cousin." Qin Shiyuan was about to activate the teleportation array and leave. The smile on Jian Fengqi's face had already disappeared, and there was a hint of coldness in his icy eyes. "Wait. His voice seemed to be filled with ice shards, making people unconsciously feel a chill in their hearts. Although his tone was languid, there was a sense of superiority and majesty. Qin Shiyuan paused for a moment before looking over. He sized up Jian Fengqi and frowned slightly. He had never seen this person before, but this man's aura seemed to indicate that he was not an ordinary person. Who gave you the guts to snatch it from me? Qin Shiyuan sneered. This isn't snatching. This teleportation array is meant to be used by whoever arrives first. We arrived before you, so naturally we will use it first. Jian Fengqi dug his ears. What did you say? Is this person crazy? Qin Shiyuan snorted and said, Oh right. We don't like to share the teleportation array with others either. So you should wait for the next one. Yunji, let's go. Before the two of them could move, they heard a mocking voice coming from behind them. So, the people of the Lingyun sect are all so shameless? Jian Fengqi's words successfully made Qin Shiyuan's blood boil. He suddenly turned around and said angrily, What did you say? Jian Fengqi smiled and said, Why, your ears are not working well again? How dare you? How dare you insult my sect? I think you're tired of living. What happened before was actually nothing. He did not intend to continue entangling with these two people, but they spoke arrogantly and insulted the Lingyun sect. He could not tolerate it. Chu Liwei thought to himself, this is nothing. Jian Fengqi once scolded the 9 elders of the Lingyun sect to their faces. He did not even bother to scold those of low levels. Qin Shiyuan did not recognize Jian Fengqi, which could only mean that his level was too low. Seriously speaking, Jian Fengqi and Qin Shiyuan's tit-for-tat confrontation could be considered to be flattering. But Qin Shiyuan obviously did not think so. He took a step forward and the force around him surged. What sect are you from? Tell me your name. Jian Fengqi touched his chin. You are not qualified to know my name. Qin Shiyuan choked. He never expected this person to be so arrogant. He took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, It seems that you didn't hear clearly before. I'll tell you again. I'm the disciple of the Lingyun sect master, Qin Shiyuan. If you insist on opposing me, don't blame me for being rude. Oh, Jian Fengqi acted as if he suddenly realized something. He raised his chin and said to Chu Liwei, Did you hear that? There were a total of 197 disciples under the Lingyun sect master, and he was one of them. This identity was very powerful. Although he said that, anyone could hear the sarcasm in his words. Qin Shiyuan's face was gloomy as he sneered. It seems that you don't care about my identity. I wonder what noble identity you have. Why don't you tell me and let me know which big shot you have offended? As he said that, his gaze fell on Chu Liwei and he sneered disdainfully. It just so happens that I also want to know who is so useless that they can only find a rank 3 warrior to come here? Chu Liwei raised her eyebrows slightly. Was he looking down on her? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 470. Jian Fengqi's expression suddenly became thought-provoking. TSK. If this guy knew that Chu Liwei was brought here by Mu Qinghe, his expression would be very interesting. He looked at Chu Liwei with a smile. Looks like he doesn't like you. Chu Liwei glanced at him. He probably wouldn't be able to change his personality of wanting to see the world in chaos. Chu Liwei looked at Qin Shiyuan and smiled faintly. Since I can come, I naturally have the qualifications. Young Master Qin doesn't need to worry about this. Qin Shiyuan suddenly froze, and a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. Previously, his attention was all on the man, so he didn't notice that the girl in red beside him was actually extremely beautiful. Zhao Yunji also froze when she saw Chu Liue's appearance. She boasted that she was also a heavenly beauty, and countless young talents had fallen for her. However, compared to this girl, she instantly paled in comparison. She almost instinctively looked at Qin Shiyuan, and as expected, she saw that his expression was a bit strange. His eyes fell on the girl for a long time without looking away. Her heart suddenly seemed to be blocked by something, and her expression became ugly. Cousin, it's better to avoid trouble. How about we just let it go? Let them go first. It won't take long anyway. She pulled Qin Shiyuan's sleeve and bit her lip. There was a hint of grievance in her eyes and she looked very pitiful. Only then did Qin Shiyuan come back to his senses. Seeing her like this, his heart instantly ached. He liked Zhao Yunji for many years, and now that he finally made a name for himself in the Tianling dynasty, he brought her over. But just after crossing heaven's canopy, he made her feel wronged. If he really let it go, what kind of man would he be? He patted her hand and said, Don't worry. I won't let anyone bully you. After saying that, he suppressed his thoughts and looked at the two people in front of him again. He originally wanted to make fun of them, but he didn't expect that these two people didn't seem to care at all. Forget about the tall man, he should have some strength. But that woman. I didn't know that a mere rank 3 warrior could be so arrogant. Qin Shiyuan mocked. Chu Luiyue sighed inwardly. Her cultivation level in the Tianling dynasty was indeed quite eye-catching. I'm just telling the truth. Her expression was calm as she spoke, neither servile nor overbearing. Qin Shiyuan already had a stomach full of anger. Since he decided to help Zhao Yunji vent her anger, his tone naturally wouldn't be good. Oh? Since you said so, why don't you tell me your name? When we get to the West Hill, we'll see if you're as powerful as you say you are. Chu Luiyue's eyes flickered. Country Yao Chen Chu Luiyue. She usually didn't find trouble with others, but if trouble came knocking on her door, she wouldn't be afraid. Country Yao Chen. Cousin, I don't think I've heard this name before. Zhao Yunji said unintentionally as she looked at the woman's alluring face with jealousy. Qin Shiyuan snorted. It's just a small country that can't even reach the apex. Someone who was sent to such a place wouldn't have a high status. He had been worrying too much. Thinking of this, he became even more unscrupulous. I'll give you a chance. As long as you're willing to kowtow and apologize, I'll let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, Jian Fengqi laughed as if he had heard a joke. Ah, what did you say? You want me to kowtow and apologize? Qin Shiyuan, who was interrupted, felt offended again. The laughter was even more ear-piercing. What? You're not willing? Chu Luiyue finally couldn't help but click her tongue. It had only been a year since he returned. How did the disciples of the Soaring Cloud sect become so arrogant and brainless? Even the sect master of the Soaring Cloud sect didn't dare to say such things to Jian Fengqi. A mere disciple of the sect master actually dared to climb over his head. The ignorant were truly fearless. Jian Fengqi laughed. What a coincidence. I was just about to say that too. But looking at you, it seems like you won't do it. Qin Shiyuan only felt that the man in front of him was really unreasonable. Who did he think he was? How dare he speak to him like that? It seems like this negotiation doesn't need to continue. The strong are respected. Let's see who's the real deal. After saying that, Qin Shiyuan leaped and flew toward Jian Fengqi. Lower stage, 7th stage. He looked like he was in his 20s. It was indeed not bad to be able to reach this stage. But in the eyes of Chu Luiyue and Jian Fengqi, it was just SOSO. Qin Shiyuan crossed his hands in front of him, and a yellowish-brown force quickly gathered. Very soon, an enormous origin sphere appeared in front of him. Great Earth Force. With this roar, he raised his hands high above his head and threw the ball out fiercely. The ball flew quickly toward Jian Fengqi. A heavy pressure came head-on. The surrounding space seemed to have become much heavier. Chu Luiyue's shoulders seemed to be pressed down by a small mountain. The pressure of a 7th-stage warrior was still somewhat unbearable for her. Jian Fengqi waved his sleeves lightly. That heavy pressure instantly dissipated. As for the ball, it stopped 3 steps away from him. Qin Shiyuan's expression changed. This man's realm was above his. Jian Fengqi raised his arm and opened his palm. Then he clenched his fist lightly. Go! That ball immediately flew in the opposite direction toward Qin Shiyuan. Its speed was even faster than when it went. Qin Shiyuan knew something was wrong and immediately retreated. But that ball was faster than him and the distance between them quickly shrank. It was as if there was an invisible hand pushing it forward, and the pressure on it was much stronger than before. Qin Shiyuan felt a tightness in his chest, and even his movements became slower. He felt more and more uneasy and immediately pulled out the scimitar at his waist. He slashed horizontally. Chi, bang! That ball suddenly exploded. A violent force spread in all directions. Qin Shiyuan was very close and was unavoidably affected. His chest shook and his body flew out uncontrollably, finally landing heavily on the ground. Oh. He clutched his chest with difficulty and spat out a mouthful of blood. Cousin! Zhao Yunji exclaimed and hurriedly ran over, worriedly helping him up. Cousin, how are you? Qin Shiyuan's mouth was still stained with blood, and his face was much paler than before. The other party's attack actually broke his ribs. Most importantly, he seemed to be injured internally. Zhao Yunji looked at him in this state and felt heartache and anger. She couldn't help but turn around and say angrily, You guys are too much. Soaring Cloud Sect will definitely not let you off for hurting my cousin. She gritted her teeth and looked at Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue, right? Don't be too proud. Wait and see when we reach Xiling. Chu Luiyue smiled. I'll be waiting for you. A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 471. From the start to the end, Chu Luiyue felt that she had been very polite. She didn't even say a word that offended him. However, they had obviously included her in their calculations and were planning to take revenge in the future. There was no point in explaining further. Moreover, she couldn't be bothered to say anything to them. The other party threatened to deal with her, so she calmly faced them and followed. However, in Zhao Yunji's eyes, this reaction made Chu Luiyue even more arrogant. Wasn't she just relying on the fact that that man was stronger? However, when they reached the West Hill, this man would definitely not be able to protect her all the time. When the time came, she would definitely take revenge for all the humiliation and grievances she had suffered today. Jian Fengqi stepped onto the teleportation array. When he walked past Qin Shiyuan and Zhao Yunji, his footsteps paused. Qin Shiyuan subconsciously shrank back. Jian Fengqi glanced at him and chuckled. The people of the Lingyun sect are really getting worse with each generation. Qin Shiyuan's face flushed red. He was about to say something, but when he thought of the terrifying aura on this man's body, he swallowed it back. Chu Luiyue followed. Jian Fengqi activated the teleportation array. The two figures quickly disappeared. After confirming that the two had left, Qin Shiyuan struggled to stand up with Zhao Yunji's help. "Cousin, it's all my fault. If I hadn't been in a hurry, these things wouldn't have happened, and they wouldn't have been so heavy-handed to you." Zhao Yunji was about to cry. Qin Shiyuan swallowed the blood in his mouth and stared at the teleportation array. "It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. When I find out that person's identity, I'll definitely teach them a lesson. My Lingyun sect is not so easy to bully." Jian Fengqi and Chu Luiyue didn't care about this small matter. After the two entered the teleportation array, the journey was smooth. Because this teleportation array's level was extremely high, the speed was actually very fast. Even though the northern border and the West Hill were extremely far away, it didn't take too long. However, for Chu Luiyue, every minute and every second near the West Hill was extremely long. Fortunately, because of the darkness, Jian Fengqi could not see her expression. "When we reach the West Hill, I'll send you to Muqinghe first," Jian Fengqi said slowly. Chu Luiyue suddenly came to his senses, and only then did he utter a sound of acknowledgement. After pausing for a moment, she finally couldn't help but ask, "It seems that many Daijingyuan Meridian cultivators from outside Heaven's Canopy have come this time." This was a little strange. The Tianling dynasty didn't lack such geniuses. Spending so much manpower and resources to search for them outside Heaven's Canopy was truly puzzling. Jian Fengqi chuckled lightly as if he was in disdain. "They're always up to something messy. Who knows what they're up to this time?" Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat and she probingly asked in a low voice, "Them?" He thought that Jian Fengqi wouldn't answer, but he was surprisingly honest this time. "It's the Tianling dynasty's third princess and her husband, Xuanhuan and jianghu. It's really them." Chu Luiyue was extremely glad that they were in the space tunnel, and Jian Fengqi couldn't see her expression. Hearing that Chu Luiyue was silent, Jian Fengqi explained again. "Oh, the third princess's current status is equivalent to the ruler of the entire Tianling dynasty. When you reach the West Hill, you'll naturally know." He didn't say it earlier because he wasn't very familiar with Chu Luiyue, and she was still in country Yaochen at that time. However, now that she was about to reach the West Hill, even if he didn't say it, she could find out from others. In addition, the two of them had spent some time together, and he somewhat admired Chu Luiyue, so he was willing to take the initiative to say a few words. Chu Luiyue's mind raced. She restrained her emotions and asked with slight surprise, "What do you mean? Don't tell me the Tianling dynasty doesn't have one?" "His Majesty is seriously ill and bedridden, so he left most of the matters to the third princess to manage," Jian Fengqi said lightly with a hint of contempt and disdain in his tone. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. Father is actually still alive. She thought that after she died of rape, xuanhuan and jianghu would definitely not let her father off. She didn't expect that after so long, they still hadn't completely taken action. She hesitated for a moment, lowered her voice and asked, "Young Master Jian, you seem to have feelings for the third princess. Contempt? Disdain? Disgust?" Chu Luiyue didn't finish her sentence. Jian Fengqi suddenly laughed. "Have you ever told me that your cleverness can be very annoying sometimes? Especially when it's like..." Jian Fengqi's words came to an abrupt end. Chu Luiyue coughed. "It's all in the past, so let's not talk about it. However, you guessed right. He really does hate xuanhuan." Chu Luiyue blinked, somewhat curious. As far as she knew, Jian Fengqi had a good impression of Xuanhuan back then, and even helped Shanghaiwan find trouble with her. Of course at that time she didn't realize that Xuanhuan did it on purpose. She only thought that Jian Fengqi had lost his mind and had a big quarrel with him. She didn't expect that his attitude toward Xuanhuan had changed so much. Chu Luyue was about to ask a few more questions to find out the purpose of Xuanhuan and Jiang Yuqing's actions, when she suddenly saw a light in front of her. She suddenly clenched her fists. "We're here. Let's go." Jian Fengqi took the lead and walked out. Chu Luyue took a deep breath and followed closely behind. Heaven and earth spun, the darkness receded, and bright sunlight poured down. However, this time Chu Luyue didn't cover her eyes with her hands. She opened her eyes and stared straight ahead. The majestic Xiling city was like a ferocious beast entrenched in its territory. It stood between heaven and earth. It was majestic and solemn. The sunlight was so glaring that it stung her eyes and tears almost flowed out. Xiling. She had finally returned. Digression. There's still one more update later. Everyone go to bed early. It's the same in the morning. Chapter 472. This was the Pingliang Plaza outside Xiling City. The entire plaza was built with rare and expensive lapis lazuli and occupied a large area. There were also several transportation formations in the plaza. The one that Chu Luyue and the others used was in the center. When the two of them walked out of the space tunnel, the bustling plaza instantly quieted down. Countless pairs of eyes looked over. Every day many people came from all over the place and many people left the Western Mausoleum. Therefore there was an endless stream of people coming and going. But the transportation formation in the center led to Heaven's Canopy at the northern border, so there was usually no one there. Now that two people suddenly appeared, it naturally attracted many people's attention. When they saw the appearance of the two people, the plaza became even quieter. The man was tall and wore a blue brocade robe, with a white jade belt around his waist that easily outlined his smooth outline. Moreover, his eyes were actually blue. At a glance, they were like the purest and most transparent ice spirits. But there was a hint of spring in the corners of his eyes, which made the originally cold eyes ripple a little more. His gaze swept over and many girls blushed. Such outstanding charm was really rare. But the girl standing beside him was not inferior, and was even more dazzling. Her figure was exquisite and slender, and she wore a red robe. Her black hair was simply tied up, and there were no extra accessories on her body. But her skin was white as snow, her eyebrows were like distant mountains, her nose was delicate, and her lips were red without any makeup. Especially her eyes, which were pure and moving like black jade. When the sunlight fell into her eyes, it was like a brilliant river of stars in the starry night. And there was a faint noble aura between her eyebrows, which added a touch of unattainable charm to her, making people unconsciously revere and submit to her. Such a girl was extremely beautiful and also extremely noble. Although many men were blushing, and their hearts were beating fast, they did not dare to go forward. They came from that transportation formation. Could it be that they came from outside Heaven's Canopy? Suddenly, a low questioning voice came from the crowd. This sentence finally broke the silence. Everyone looked at each other. Should be right. Isn't that the transportation formation that leads to the northern border? Recently many people came one after another. That man looks familiar. His blue eyes are filled with love. Isn't that young Master Jian? Which young Master Jian? It's the one from Dragon Teeth Mountain. Have you forgotten? Many people sucked in a cold breath. Jian Fengqi. His whereabouts had always been a mystery. In addition to his noble status, not many people had seen him before. However, in Xiling City he was very famous. Although he couldn't be sure, this man looked very similar to the rumors. It was most likely him. If that's really Jian Fengqi, then the woman next to him is, she was only a rank 3 warrior? She looks like she's only 15 or 16 years old. How can she only be a rank 3 warrior? The crowd fell silent. Their gazes, which were originally filled with amazement and curiosity, suddenly became somewhat subtle. Then they must be from outside Heaven's Canopy. Someone said with certainty. How could a cultivator of this level enter this place? Those who came before were at least peak rank 4. She's pretty, but she's not that strong. She dared to come to Xiling with such strength. She must have some backing, right? I think that face of hers might be her biggest backer. A few girls spoke softly, laughing together. Jian Fengqi raised his eyebrows and laughed softly. They're praising your beauty? Chu Luiyue glanced at him lazily. This person's focus was always different from others. Why are you looking at me? I'm handsome and handsome. I won't be jealous of your looks. The smile on Jian Fengqi's lips deepened, and he looked like he was waiting to watch a good show. However, Chu Luiyue's expression was calm, as if she didn't take this matter to heart at all. In fact, she had already expected this. He came from outside Heaven's canopy and was only a rank 3 warrior. Just these two factors alone were enough to bring her a lot of trouble. Moreover, fundamentally speaking, she was fighting alone and had no background or backing. This was even more unthinkable. Xiling City, as the imperial capital of the Tianling dynasty, had the most honorable status and the most abundant resources. The most powerful cultivators. Here strength reigned supreme. No weakling could survive here. Those who could stay in Xiling City were all ruthless characters. So before she came, she had already mentally prepared herself. Now this was not a big deal. She looked at the group of women who were laughing together. Her expression didn't change, but her clear eyes seemed to contain some kind of pressure that made people uneasy. The women's laughter gradually subsided. For some reason they felt guilty and avoided Chu Luiyue's gaze. Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze in satisfaction and walked forward. Hold on. A middle-aged man suddenly walked forward and blocked Chu Luiyue's path. He was tall and muscular, his face dark, and the muscles on his body almost burst his clothes. Chu Luiyue looked up and looked at the man. What's the matter? The middle-aged man sized her up, and his voice was like a bell. People from outside have to pay to use our Tianling dynasty's teleportation array. The one you're using is the biggest, so it'll be counted as 10 white crystal coins. In Heaven's canopy, silver and gold were no longer considered hard currencies. Instead, they were replaced by the more precious white crystal coins. 1 white crystal coin was equivalent to 10,000 taels of gold outside Heaven's canopy. 10 white crystal coins were equivalent to 10,000 taels of gold. This was clearly an exorbitant demand. Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed dangerously and she smiled. Just in time. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 473. It's not impossible for me to pay, but I need to know your identity first, right? Chu Luiyue said calmly. Seeing Chu Luiyue's attitude, the man thought that she was afraid and became even more arrogant. I am Wu Zhao, a disciple of 8 Paths sect. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. 8 Paths sect was just a third-rate sect in Xiling. She didn't expect that one of their people would dare to show off in front of her in Pingliang Square. I'm not asking for your name, I'm asking, why are you taking my money? You don't sound like you're from the government, right? Wu Zhao was stunned for a moment before he understood Chu Luiyue's meaning. He clenched his fists and took a step forward. Chu Luiyue looked even more petite and dainty compared to his tall and sturdy figure. What? Of course it's because my fists are hard. If you don't pay today, don't even think about leaving. It was obvious that they were trying to rob him. The many teleportation arrays in Pingliang Square all belonged to the royal family of the Tianling dynasty. Under normal circumstances, as long as there were no special circumstances, these teleportation arrays could be used by cultivators. However, maintaining these teleportation arrays would consume a huge amount of money, so they would charge a symbolic maintenance fee. However, even the largest teleportation array she was using now only charged 1 white crystal coin for 10 people. This Wu Zhao asked for 10 white crystals. It was simply an exorbitant price. The most important thing was that although the Black Cavalry was responsible for maintaining the teleportation arrays, they were only responsible for maintaining law and order. The collection of fees was mostly left to the sects in Xiling City. These sects would give people preferential treatment when using the teleportation arrays, and they could even make a profit from it, so it was naturally harmonious. Therefore, although there were many Black Cavalry patrolling around, when they saw Wu Zhao looking for trouble with Chu Luiyue, no one stepped forward. Under normal circumstances, as long as no lives were involved, they wouldn't pay too much attention. Jian Fengqi crossed his arms and watched from the sidelines with a smile. This Wu Zhao was only at the early stage of the 5th stage, so if he took action, it wouldn't be a problem. However, it seemed that Chu Luiyue didn't intend to let him intervene. He also wanted to see how Chu Luiyue would deal with these troubles after coming to Xiling City. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. Jian Fengqi could help her once, but he couldn't help her a second time, third time, or countless times. Besides, she knew the rules of Xiling. If she couldn't solve this problem, then she would always beat it to others. What if I say no? Chu Luiyue asked slowly. Wu Zhao laughed coldly. Little girl, it seems like this is your first time in West Hill. There are some rules that you don't know yet. To be honest, to pay the money to pay, otherwise, it would be a pity if such a beautiful face was ruined. I said no, said Chu Luiyue resolutely. Was to Chu to be. It's fine if you don't want to, as long as you can defeat me. As he spoke, he looked at Chu Luiyue condescendingly again. His aura burst out and almost enveloped Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue smiled and nodded. As soon as she finished speaking, the surroundings suddenly became quiet. Wu Xiao frowned. What did you say? Chu Luiyue pointed at herself. I said, Not to mention that she didn't have any white crystal coins on her. Even if she did, she wouldn't waste them on such a place. Wu Xiao was so angry that he laughed. Good. You're the one who said it. Don't regret it later. Chu Luiyue looked around and raised her chin at an empty space next to her. Over there. As he spoke, he walked over without saying a word. Everyone looked at each other. She's not crazy, is she? She really wants to challenge Wu Xiao? Although Wu Xiao can only be regarded as a middle to lower level in 8-path sect, he is still at the early stage of the 5th stage. That woman is only a 3rd stage warrior. Isn't she courting death? Who knows what she's thinking? Anyway, she came here with Jian Fengqi. She probably thinks that Wu Xiao won't dare to kill her? Pingliang Square has always had a rule: as long as it's a one-on-one battle, no one else can interfere. Although Jian Fengqi is noble and powerful, he definitely knows that if he intervenes halfway, that woman won't be able to raise her head in the entire Xiling city. I just hope that Wu Xiao doesn't hurt that woman's face. It's been a long time since such a beautiful woman appeared in Xiling city. Chu Luiyue didn't care about the discussions around her. She walked to the empty space and stood there, looking at Wu Xiao opposite her. Chu Luiyue from country Yao Chen is here to challenge you. Wu Xiao stretched his shoulders and stared at Chu Luiyue. Wu Xiao from 8-path sect accepts the challenge. As soon as he finished speaking, he moved and took the lead to rush towards Chu Luiyue. Although he was burly, his movements were extremely nimble and his speed was extremely fast. He was like a moving hill. In the blink of an eye, he was already in front of Chu Luiyue. It was a simple straight punch and it struck out fiercely. In his opinion, such a delicate 3rd stage warrior was not worthy of him using his martial arts skills. One punch was enough. Chu Luiyue's hair fluttered in the wind. The tyrannical wind from the punch caused her clothes to flutter. The pressure came straight at her face. Seeing that the fist that was almost the size of Chu Luiyue's face was about to land, many people shook their heads regretfully. Was this woman scared out of her wits? She didn't even know how to dodge. From the looks of it, he seemed to have some confidence, but it turned out that it was just a pretense. At this moment, Chu Luiyue took a wrong step, her waist went soft and she bent backward. She narrowly avoided the punch. Then she raised her right hand and grabbed Wu Xiao's wrist. Wu Xiao was shocked. How did the woman manage to dodge it? Before he could figure it out, he suddenly felt a sharp pain coming from his wrist. Chu Luiyue had closed her fingers and locked them inwards. Then he viciously twisted his wrist upwards. Almost at the same time, she lifted her leg and kicked Wu Xiao's elbow. Extreme numbness and pain came, causing the strength in Wu Xiao's arm to dissipate instantly. His arm went soft for a moment. He was extremely shocked and furious. His other hand immediately stretched out and grabbed Chu Luiyue. However, Chu Luiyue used her leg to lock Wu Xiao's arm, and then turned her waist. Her entire body flipped in the air. Wu Xiao's arm was trapped and was almost broken. Then Chu Luiyue landed lightly, but Wu Xiao was implicated and fell directly to the ground. Bang! His heavy body landed on the ground with a dull thud. Wu Xiao clenched his teeth and was about to get up to counterattack, but Chu Luiyue had already taken advantage of him and stomped on Wu Xiao's chest. That slender and straight long leg looked extremely beautiful, but it contained an astonishing amount of power. With one stomp, gotcha! Wu Xiao's chest actually caved in deeply. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 474. Was this lady's leg made of iron? This thought flashed across Wu Xiao's mind. His face instantly turned pale. When the crowd saw this scene, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. That Chu Luiyue had actually broken Wu Xiao's bones with one stomp. From the way he was injured, he had at least 3 broken ribs. Since when did a 3rd-level warrior's physical strength become so strong? One must know that a 5th-level warrior at this age was basically not qualified to collect money in Pingliang Square. The reason why Wu Xiao was an exception was because he was born with divine strength. That body of muscles was not just for show. But just now, he had been easily knocked down by a slender woman. Chu Luiyue looked down at Wu Xiao with a smile on her face. "You're weaker than I thought." Wu Xiao was furious and raised both his hands to grab Chu Luiyue's ankles. Chu Luiyue stomped hard again. Kacha. The sound of bones breaking was even clearer. An intense pain came from his chest, causing Wu Xiao to break out in cold sweat. He wanted to get up, but his body felt as heavy as a mountain. He was unable to move at all. Before this, he had never thought that he would actually suffer such a huge loss at the hands of such a delicate-looking woman. If it was just a simple physical fight, he would most likely not win. Wu Xiao's mind turned and he immediately decided to use his martial arts. Sensing the force in his body, Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. If she did not use the power of the water droplet in her dantian, the force in her body would not be able to compete with a 5th-level warrior like Wu Xiao. So, she definitely could not give him this chance. A force flew out from Wu Xiao's palm. Chu Luiyue moved sideways to avoid it. At the same time, she took a step back. Wu Xiao was delighted. He pushed his palm against the ground and flipped himself up. But when he stood up, he realized that Chu Luiyue was no longer in front of him. His heart was suddenly filled with shock. A cold wind came from the back of his head. He did not even think before he pounced forward and rolled on the ground. A flying dagger as thin as a cicada's wing directly pierced into the position where he had just been standing. 1/3 of the blade had sunk in. Wu Xiao turned around and saw that the flying dagger was still trembling slightly. His eyelids twitched fiercely. The plaza was made of lapis lazuli and was extremely hard. Normal yuan tools would not be able to leave any marks on it. However, this Chu Luiyue had only thrown a flying knife and it was easily split open. This was something he knew he couldn't do. It wasn't hard to imagine what would have happened if he had dodged a step slower. Wu Xiao felt a chill run down his spine as he felt some regret in his heart. A person who could take out a throwing knife of this level definitely had a big background. However, if he were to admit defeat now, he would definitely become the laughingstock of the entire Xiling city. Thinking of this, he suddenly pulled out the saber at his waist. An inch longer, an inch stronger. He didn't believe that he couldn't defeat a rank 3 warrior. Just as he began to crazily inject his origin power into the saber, another flying saber flew out from Chu Luiyue's hand. The situation was urgent, and Wu Xiao didn't have time to use any martial arts techniques. He was forced to stop and raise his saber to meet the attack. Swish! That flying knife was only the size of a finger, and it scraped across Wu Xiao's saber. A series of sparks flew. Following this ear-piercing sound, he was shocked to see that a neat crack had appeared on his saber. Immediately crack. The saber split into 2 halves. Even the origin power in his body suffered a backlash and became chaotic. At this moment, Chu Luiyue took a big stride forward. He actually charged directly towards Wu Xiao. Then he lifted his long leg and kicked towards his heart. Wu Xiao's heart trembled. He threw away the saber handle, clenched his fists tightly, and crossed them in front of his body to block. Chu Luiyue's leg accurately kicked his wrist that was injured just now. Crack. His wrist suddenly showed a strange posture. Wu Xiao groaned and took half a step back. His eyes were burning with rage. Despicable. However, Chu Luiyue used the rebounding force to jump up. Wu Xiao was furious. Ignoring his injury, he used his other hand to grab Chu Luiyue's calf. Then he fell heavily to the ground. Bang! Chu Luiyue's back hit the ground hard. Her body shook and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Wu Xiao's eyes were red. He suddenly dragged Chu Luiyue backwards. Chu Luiyue's body left a trail of blood on the ground. Just as she was thinking of how to escape, Wu Xiao suddenly stopped. Then he threw Chu Luiyue up again and threw her down heavily. On the ground, a cold light flashed. It was the flying knife that Chu Luiyue had thrown out earlier. Once it reached his back, it would definitely pierce through his heart. Go to hell, Wu Xiao shouted angrily. However, at this moment, a red shadow flashed past. Wu Xiao suddenly felt a sharp pain on his arm. His hand unconsciously loosened. He turned his head to look. It was a 3rd-grade blood ferret that had bitten off a layer of flesh from his forearm. Blood dripped. Chu Luiyue took the opportunity to escape. She rolled on the ground and avoided Wu Xiao's attack. The next moment, she waved her wrist and a cold light flew out from her hand. Wu Xiao saw clearly that it was a dagger this time. He quickly dodged. However, just as the dagger was about to graze past his ear, a flying dagger suddenly flew out from the tip of the dagger. Wu Xiao's pupils shrank. He wanted to avoid it immediately. However, he was still a step too late. That flying knife directly pierced through his shoulder. When Chu Luiyue got up from the ground, she had already pulled out the flying knife. She had also retrieved the dagger. Wu Zhao covered his shoulder, but blood still flowed out. Chu Luiyue rushed forward again. Wu Zhao felt extremely sullen. He wanted to use martial techniques, but Chu Luiyue's attacks were fast and hurried, leaving him no time to gather his strength. Every time he prepared to attack, Chu Luiyue would make the first move. It was as if she did not care about her life and did not hold back at all. It was as if she was not worried about the consequences if she missed. He lifted his eyes to look at Chu Luiyue. Those black jade-like eyes were burning with a crazy fighting spirit. It was as if she would not stop until she died. The injuries on her body were not much better than his. Her entire body was stained with blood, but her fighting spirit seemed to be getting stronger. Wu Zhao's heart skipped a beat, and he felt an inexplicable sense of fear. Although he had cultivated for many years and had a lot of fighting experience, he did not have the will to fight to the death. This Chu Luiyue was as if she did not care about her life. In a battle, strength was very important, but at the same time, willpower was not to be underestimated. Once the spirit was discouraged, it would be defeated. This was the case for Wu Zhao now. Facing Chu Luiyue's continuous approach, he subconsciously took a step back. Suddenly, a strange sound came from behind him. He suddenly turned around. He saw that the blood ferret had a dagger in its mouth. It shook its tail and threw the dagger out. Chu Luiyue rushed forward and grabbed the dagger. Wu Zhao had just reacted when he suddenly felt a cold tingling sensation coming from the back of his neck. Do you want to admit defeat or do you want to continue? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience came from love. Chapter 475. Admit defeat? Wu Zhao couldn't say that no matter what. Continue? The sharp dagger on his neck was about to pierce his neck. He didn't doubt that as long as Chu Luiyue wanted to, he could cut him in half right now. Countless pairs of eyes looked over, making him extremely embarrassed. He couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. Chu Luiyue flicked the dagger lightly, making a crisp sound. Wu Zhao's body almost trembled. You win. He closed his eyes and said as if he had accepted his fate. After he said that, the surroundings were dead silent. Wu Zhao actually admitted defeat. He, a beginner stage 5 warrior, actually lost to a stage 3 warrior. If this news were to spread, it would definitely cause a huge commotion in Xiling City. Am I too ignorant and inexperienced? When did the stage 3 warriors outside Heaven's Canopy become so strong? Someone in the crowd muttered softly. Or is Wu Zhao's stage 5 warrior strength just fake? Wu Zhao's face turned red and white. His veins were bulging and he wanted to curse out loud. His strength was fake. If they have the ability, then come and try. This Chu Luiyue, damn it, she's not a normal person at all. It wasn't like he hadn't fought with stage 3 warriors before. Who was like her? Other things aside, just her physical strength and speed were not inferior to his at all. Where did such a freak come from? Admit defeat? Chu Luiyue curled her lips in satisfaction. Okay, then take 10 white crystal coins. Wu Zhao was stunned. What did you say? Chu Luiyue explained with a smile. I said, since you chose to admit defeat, then give me 10 white crystal coins and we'll forget about this matter. Wu Zhao didn't react for a while. Why should I give you so much money? I already said that you won. What else do you want? They didn't bet 10 white crystal coins. Whoever loses gets to take it. Chu Luiyue blinked. So you don't want to give it to me? In your dreams. Wu Zhao shouted furiously. He had been in Xiling City for so many years, but he had never seen anyone who not only refused to pay, but also asked for money. Chu Luiyue, right? I'm warning you, this isn't your lousy third-rate country. You can do whatever you want here. It's best if you stop while you're ahead. Otherwise, Chu Luiyue impatiently pushed the dagger forward. The sharp tip of the dagger instantly pierced his flesh. Warm and sweet blood slowly flowed out from the dagger. Wu Zhao's voice stopped abruptly. Admit defeat and take 10 white crystal coins. Let's continue then. Chu Luiyue kindly explained. I'll ask you again, which one do you choose? Wu Zhao was so angry that smoke was almost coming out of his head. You. How dare you? It seems that you think your life is not worth 10 white crystal coins? Chu Luiyue shook his head regretfully. What a pity. As he spoke, he flicked his wrist and was about to make a move. I'll give. Wu Zhao finally couldn't hold back and shouted. He had a premonition in his heart. This Chu Luiyue really dared to kill him. He stiffened his body, took out 10 white crystal coins from his xianxuan bag, and handed them to Chu Luiwei. "Take it." Chu Luiwei gave Dumpling a look. Dumpling immediately went forward, hugged the ball of white crystal coins and flew towards Chu Luiwei. Chu Luiwei glanced at it from the corner of his eyes. After confirming that it was indeed 10 white crystal coins, he finally retreated. Sensing that the dagger was finally far away, Wu Zhao finally heaved a sigh of relief. He couldn't help but look back at Chu Luiwei resentfully and angrily. He raised his finger and pointed at Chu Luiwei. "I, Wu Zhao, will remember what happened today. You'd better pray that you don't meet me again." Chu Luiwei smiled and shook the white crystal coins in his hand. "You're most welcome." Wu Zhao's face was livid, but he still turned and left in the end. Even after his figure disappeared, the square was still silent. The outcome of the matter was completely different from what they had expected. It was no wonder that they were so shocked. Chu Luiwei kept the 10 white crystal coins, walked to Jian Fengqi and patted his xianhuan bag. First bucket of gold. Although this amount of money was nothing to her, it was better to have more. With these, her days in Xiling City should be a little easier. Jian Fengqi's mouth twitched. First bucket of gold? How could this girl have the nerve to say that? He thought that his skin was already thick enough, but he didn't expect Chu Luiwei to be even thicker. She was probably the first person to steal money from the guards of the teleportation portal. No matter what, after this battle, Chu Luiwei's name would definitely spread quickly in Xiling City. "You really dare to kill that Wu Zhao?" Jian Fengqi asked. No matter what, he is still a disciple of a sect. Chu Luiwei glanced at him and suddenly revealed a bright smile. "Don't I have young Master Jian's protection?" Jian Fengqi? When did this young master say? Jian Fengqi was about to refute when he saw the teasing look in Chu Luiwei's eyes and suddenly understood. That's right. He was the one who brought Chu Luiwei here. Didn't that mean that Chu Luiwei was on his side? The people of Eight Paths sect didn't have the guts to openly oppose him. Even if Chu Luiwei really killed Wu Zhao today, they wouldn't dare to do anything in private. What's more, so many people saw clearly that Chu Luiwei did win this battle with his own ability. If you agree to bet, you must accept defeat. No wonder she was so confident. Jian Fengqi narrowed his eyes. You really know how to take advantage of the situation. You haven't even entered the Western Tomb and you've already offended 2 sections. I don't know if I should say you're brave or, the first one has nothing to do with me. Don't worry, they'll definitely count you in. So now we're even. Jian Fengqi suddenly felt that something was wrong. This girl really didn't want to suffer any losses. Since this matter has been resolved, we should go. Jian Fengqi raised his chin. Chu Luiwei readily agreed. The two left Pingliang Square just like that, leaving behind countless gazes. After walking for some distance, Jian Fengqi turned his head and looked at Chu Luiwei several times and couldn't help but ask curiously. Although you have some strength, you've offended so many people. Are you really not afraid at all? Chu Luiwei looked at the towering city gate in front of her and smiled. What do I have to be afraid of? The people she wanted to deal with were the noblest existences in Western Tomb City. What were these small shrimps to her? They were just appetizers. When she returned this time, she had already made up her mind to completely overturn the entire Western Tomb. Seeing the surging waves in Chu Luiwei's eyes, Jian Fengqi's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He didn't know why, but he felt that Chu Luiwei's aura was somewhat strange, as if it contained killing intent. Chu Luiwei raised her eyebrows and smiled, then walked toward the city gate. The West Hill must be very exciting. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience came from Love Network. Chapter 476. The city gates of Xiling were made of gilded copper. They were thick and tall, and it was rumored that even a level 8 warrior could barely leave a shallow mark on them. It was impossible to break them open. The city walls were made of grayish-green rocks and they were extremely hard. Thousands of years of wind and frost had added a touch of vicissitudes to this ancient and sacred imperial capital. There were a total of 3 entrances to the city gates. The one in the middle was the largest, and only the noblest people of the Tianling dynasty could pass through it. Under normal circumstances, this entrance was tightly locked. A golden plaque hung on it with the words Xiling written on it. It was majestic, solemn, and majestic. The side entrances on both sides were for ordinary people to enter and exit. Although they were smaller than the entrance in the middle, each entrance could still accommodate hundreds of people entering and exiting at the same time. There were hundreds of black cavalry guards near each entrance. Anyone who entered or exited Xiling had to go through a strict examination. Even so, there were still many people coming and going and it was very lively. As the imperial capital of the Tianling dynasty, countless cultivators came here every day as if they were on a pilgrimage. Chu Luiyue and Jian Fengqi walked forward with the crowd. However, probably because the two of them were too beautiful and many people had seen the commotion in Pingliang Square, there seemed to be a transparent barrier around the two of them, isolating them from the rest. When they walked to the entrance, a guard standing in front looked up and saw Jian Fengqi. He immediately said respectfully, "I've seen." Jian Fengqi waved his hand and threw the token in his hand over. "I'm bringing someone." The guard could tell that Jian Fengqi did not want to be ostentatious and couldn't help but be amazed. In the entire Xiling, this lord was definitely the one who liked to be lively. It was rare for him to be so low-key this time. His gaze fell on Chu Luiyue, and a trace of amazement flashed across his eyes. "This is..." Chu Luiyue handed the token over. "Country Yao Chen Chu Luiyue." So he came from outside Heaven's canopy and was only a level 3 warrior? However, since he could come with Jian Fengqi, he had to give him face. He examined Chu Luiyue's token and was shocked. This was clearly Vice Admiral Mu's token. It seemed that this girl's background was more complicated than he imagined. He respectfully returned the token to the two and looked at Chu Luiyue. "You came at the right time. The Wanzheng competition will begin tomorrow. As long as they registered at Xuanli Garden, they could officially participate in the competition tomorrow." Chu Luiyue was stunned. Wanzheng competition? But she had never heard of it. Upon seeing Chu Luiyue's expression, the person thought that she didn't know where Xuanli Garden was. "Do you need someone to take you there?" Chu Luiyue subconsciously. "I'll ask young Master Jian for help. There's no need to trouble yourself." Jian Fengqi raised his brows. This girl seemed to be quite handy with him. The guard was shocked. He carefully glanced at Jian Fengqi and was slightly relieved when he saw that he wasn't angry. "That's right. I will naturally bring her there." Jian Fengqi gestured at Chu Luiyue. "Follow this young master." Chu Luiyue smiled faintly and followed him. Xuan Garden was a famous royal garden in Xiling City. It had been there since the Taizu era. She used to like to go there when she was free. She didn't expect that the first place she wanted to go was there. Jian Fengqi walked in front, waving a green jade fan in his hand. "Xuan Garden is a good place. You can go in and take a look later." In the past, not everyone could enter that place. Chu Luiyue could tell that there was a hidden meaning in his words. She pretended to be curious and took the opportunity to ask, "In the past?" "Forget about the garden in the past. There's no point in talking to you about it. Anyway, the scenery is good." Chu Luiyue tactfully changed the topic. "What's the Wanzheng competition about? Vice Admiral Mu didn't mention it to me before." Jian Fengqi paused. He put away his green jade fan and rested it on his chin. "It's just some boring competition. You'll know when you go there tomorrow." Anyway, in his eyes, this was just what xuanhuan and the others said. They inexplicably held this Wanzheng competition in the name of grooming geniuses into powerhouses. But who knew what they were up to? Seeing that Jian Fengqi didn't think much of it, Chu Luiyue nodded lightly and didn't ask any more questions. The two of them walked forward and soon arrived at Xuan Garden. However, when they arrived at the entrance of Xuan Garden, Chu Luiyue acutely sensed that there were several powerhouses hidden here. Several scrutinizing gazes swept over her. Chu Luiyue pretended not to notice and obediently followed behind Jian Fengqi. Two servants stood in front of Xuan Garden's entrance. Chu Luiyue quickly scanned them. As expected, they were two unfamiliar faces. However, the two clearly recognized Jian Fengqi. Their originally cold and stern faces immediately revealed eager smiles. "Greetings, young Master Jian." Jian Fengqi waved his green jade fan impatiently. "How does one register for the Wanzheng competition?" The two's gazes fell on Chu Luiyue. Needless to say, this was the person who wanted to register. However, Jian Fengqi didn't seem to be on the list of people to bring, right? However, they didn't dare to ask and respectfully said, "Please come in. Please come in. The registration area is at Xiaofu Garden. There will naturally be someone to help you there." Jian Fengqi winked at Chu Luiyue and walked in first. Chu Luiyue's expression didn't change as she followed behind him and stepped through the door. A strong fragrance assailed her nostrils. It was mixed with a faint bitterness, but it was refreshing. Xuanli Garden occupied a large area and planted a large number of herbs. That was why the entire garden was filled with this fragrance. Herbs that were rarely seen outside could be found everywhere here. Chu Luiyue's gaze swept lightly across the surrounding grass and trees. She sighed softly in her heart. Her mother had died and her subordinates were homeless. However, these herbs had been preserved in perfect condition. Oh, she had almost forgotten. Xuanhuan was also a celestial physician. She had personally cultivated these things back then, but in the end Xuanhuan had benefited from all of them. At this thought, Chu Liyue's gaze turned cold. However, it disappeared in an instant, and her expression quickly returned to normal. Because there was something that couldn't be ignored, there were even more hidden cultivators in Xuanli Garden. Along the way she felt like she had been checked over and over again. Jian Fengqi obviously noticed this as well. His expression turned cold. After walking through the front courtyard and bypassing the 7-star bridge, the two finally arrived at Xiaofu Garden. A man who looked to be about 30 years old was sitting quietly behind a table. Hearing footsteps, the man looked up. When he saw Jian Fengqi, he smiled. I was wondering who it was. So it's you. Jian Fengqi frowned. Lu Xingyi? Why are you here? Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. The third princess sent me here. Where else would I be if not here? As Lu Xingyi spoke, he looked at Chu Liyue with a playful expression. Is this the person you brought with you? A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 477. A Stage 3 Warrior. Jian Fengqi, can't you find a more outstanding cultivator? Before this, the lowest registration was at the peak of Stage 4. I think you guys should just not participate in this Wanzheng competition. Lu Xingyi said sarcastically. Chu Liyue felt disgusted. Lu Xingyi was one of Xuanhuan's confidants. He was sinister and cunning. She disliked this person very much back then, but Xuanhuan always used the reason that he had saved her life before to speak up for him, so she turned a blind eye to it. Moreover, Jian Fengqi had a bad relationship with him. Lu Xingyi once had a girl he liked very much, but that girl was infatuated with Jian Fengqi. After being rejected by Jian Fengqi, she shaved her head and became a nun. Because of this, Lu Xingyi had always hated Jian Fengqi. In fact, this matter didn't have much to do with Jian Fengqi. Although he was a playboy and often had affairs with other women, he had always done it willingly and was very gentlemanly. He didn't like that girl, so he directly rejected her. Who knew that things would turn out like this in the end? Lu Xingyi made things difficult for him. At first, Jian Fengqi didn't argue with him, but later on, he realized that Lu Xingyi wouldn't stop and became anxious. The two of them fell out completely. When enemies met, their eyes would naturally turn red. Do you think it's up to you to decide whether to participate or not? I've already brought her here. You know what to do. Jian Fengqi sneered. Lu Xingyi was annoyed when he saw his face. However, there were many people watching in the dark. Of course, he couldn't do something so deceptive in public. Origin, name, age. He flipped open a booklet and picked up a pen. Chu Liyue said, Country Yaoqian Chu Liyue 14. Lu Xingyi's pen paused and he looked up at her again. She was quite young. Warrior rank. 3rd rank. Lu Xingyi didn't seem to mind and sneered. Chu Liyue pretended not to hear anything. That's enough. Take this with you and go to Xuanji Square tomorrow morning to participate in the Wanzheng competition. As he spoke, Lu Xingyi handed over a red string bracelet with a longan-sized bronze bead strung on it. This represents your identity. If you lose it, it will automatically be considered as a forfeit. Chu Liyue took the bracelet. Thank you, Lord Lu. Something flashed across Lu Xingyi's eyes as he stared at Chu Liyue and laughed mysteriously. You're quite sensible. Although she came with Jian Fengqi, she was indeed a stunning beauty. Maybe I can find a chance to. Chu Liyue pretended not to see the intention in his eyes. Jian Fengqi grabbed her arm. Let's go. This place is foul. I can't stay here a moment longer. Chu Liyue staggered, but she didn't feel dissatisfied with Jian Fengqi. Instead, she curved her lips and said in an inaudible voice, Thank you. Jian Fengqi glanced at her in annoyance. Did this girl know what kind of person Lu Xingyi was? Be careful of this person in the future. Chu Liyue rarely felt that Jian Fengqi was so pleasing to the eye. Her smile deepened. I know. Jian Fengqi felt inexplicably weak from her smile. He let go of her arm and walked forward quickly. Chu Liyue said slowly from behind, Young Master Jian, don't walk so fast. You still have to send me off. Jian Fengqi suddenly stopped. Did he owe Chu Liyue and Mu Qinghe in his previous life? Hurry up and go. The two figures gradually disappeared into the distance. Lu Xingyi's expression quickly changed and became much more respectful. Seniors, what do you think of this Chu Liyue? Xiaofu Garden was silent, only the sound of the wind rustling the leaves could be heard. After a moment, a hoarse voice sounded. Daijing Yuan Meridian, medium. Lu Xingyi was shocked. Chu Luiyue, who was only a stage 3 warrior, had such a good Yuan meridian? But if he had such talent, how could he only reach stage 3 at the age of 14? This matter didn't make sense. But even if he had the guts, he wouldn't dare to question this judgment. He flipped open the book and added a small medium below Chu Luiyue's name. Chu Luiyue and Jian Fengqi arrived at the Mu residence. Seeing the familiar door, Chu Luiyue was a little dazed for a moment. As the deputy general of the Black Cavalry, Mu Qinghe had a high position and was given a residence early on. He had always been diligent and thrifty, so he didn't care much about such things. Back then, Chu Luiyue was the one who helped him pick this courtyard. Even the decorations were mostly done according to her preferences. He didn't expect that with the passage of time, he was still living here safely. The corners of Chu Luiyue's mouth moved slightly. He wanted to laugh but he couldn't. This scene was too ironic. Outside the Mu residence, there were 2 soldiers in black armor guarding the entrance. Seeing Jian Fengqi, one of them immediately stepped forward. "Welcome, young Master Jian." Jian Fengqi asked, "Where's your master? I personally brought him back, why isn't he coming out?" The soldier said respectfully, "Young Master Jian, the deputy general is not in the residence right now. But before he left, he said that if you bring someone here, you can go in directly." "Not here? Where did he go?" Jian Fengqi asked casually. The 2 soldiers looked at each other awkwardly. "This subordinate doesn't know." Jian Fengqi snorted. Although Xiling City was big, there were only a few places Mu Qinghe would go. He waved the green jade fan in his hand. "I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. This Miss Chu was personally invited by your deputy general. You must serve her well, understand?" The 2 soldiers glanced at Chu Luiyue, but their expressions were very calm. "Yes." Chu Luiyue thought self-deprecatingly. These soldiers were indeed personally trained by Mu Qinghe. Faced with her appearance and cultivation level, they didn't show the same expression as the others. They looked at her as if she was a piece of wood. Mu Qinghe always led soldiers with strict military discipline. This was also why he could win every battle. Jian Fengqi turned around and winked at Chu Luiyue. "Go by yourself." Chu Luiyue thanked him again. After Jian Fengqi really left, she stepped over the threshold. One of the soldiers quickly walked up to them. "Miss Chu, please follow me." There were no servants or maids in the Mu residence. Those who served here were all soldiers of the Black Cavalry. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly and followed. She had just taken 2 steps when she suddenly heard a strange movement beside her. Chu Luiyue seemed to have sensed something and turned her head to look. A green shadow quickly flew towards her. It was Hong Yao. Chu Luiyue smiled. "Hong Yao, long time no see." Before she finished speaking, the smile on her face suddenly froze. There was a trace of scarlet blood under Hong Yao's wings. Digression. Today's update is complete. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Iowa. Chapter 478. However, the red demon quickly landed on Chu Luiyue's shoulder and retracted its wings. The soldier leading the way did not notice this abnormality. The other shoulder sank slightly. Dumpling had also come out. She crossed her arms and glared at the red demon. Just as Chu Luiyue thought that she was going to cause trouble for the red demon again, Dumpling curled its tail and obediently squatted on her shoulder. Chu Luiyue heaved a sigh of relief. It was quite rare that these 2 did not fight when they met. Chu Luiyue looked at the soldier in front of her and saw that he was looking at her with a shocked expression. "Is there something on my face?" Chu Luiyue asked. No. The soldier suddenly came back to his senses and quickly lowered his head. However, the waves in his heart did not calm down for a long time. The red demon was actually so intimate with this Miss Chu. One had to know that other than Vice Admiral Mu, no one else could even touch it. He really did not know how this Miss Chu did it. However, the soldiers who could enter the Mu clan were all well trained. Although he was very shocked and puzzled by this matter, his expression quickly returned to normal. "Miss Chu, this way please." Chu Luiyue followed him to a small courtyard behind the Mu clan. The deputy general said that since you're here, you can stay in Wind Lotus Courtyard for the time being. This place has been cleaned up inside and out. You can rest at ease. During this period of time, I will be in charge of all the affairs of Miss Chu. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly and asked with a smile, "Thank you." "Thank you. How should I address you?" "I'm Duan Ziyu, a lieutenant of the Black Cavalry." Duan Ziyu straightened his shoulders and said with full of energy, "Thank you, Lieutenant Duan." "Miss Chu, you're welcome." Chu Luiyue pointed inside. "Then I'll go in first?" Duan Ziyu said, please. Chu Luiwei walked towards Wind Lotus courtyard. She didn't need to turn around to know that Duan Ziyu was standing guard at the entrance of the courtyard. In fact, she could sense that Duan Ziyu was not the only one. There were many people hiding in all directions of Wind Lotus Garden. Whether it was protection or surveillance, Chu Luiwei didn't care. Since they were already in West Hill, there were still many things to do. She walked into the room and closed the doors and windows. As soon as she sat down, she went to see Hong Yao. Hong Yao obediently let her hold it. Chu Luiwei opened his wings and took a look. Sure enough, there was a shallow wound. The bloodstains had dried up and the wound had just scabbed over. It looked like a recent injury, but fortunately it was not fatal. But the point was that Red Demon was a high-level demon beast, and everyone knew that it was Mu Qinghe's demon beast. Who would be so bold to hurt it? Oh. Chu Luiwei asked briefly with a frown. Hong Yao just hugged her hand and pressed her head tightly against her palm. In her clear and beautiful ruby-like eyes, there was a trace of rare sadness and grief. A drop of hot tear fell silently from his eyes. Chu Luiwei felt a pain in her heart. She had always loved Hong Yao and couldn't bear to see it sad like this. What's wrong? Who bullied you? Chu Luiwei gently wiped its tears and asked softly. In West Hill, Hong Yao could be called a tyrant. There were not many people who could bully it. Hong Yao just shook its head. Chu Luiwei thought for a moment. If it was injured in a normal fight, it would definitely not react like this. It seemed that it was more related to Mu Qinghe. Where did your master go? Chu Luiwei asked. Hong Yao didn't move and refused to say anything. Chu Luiwei had no choice but to touch its head gently. Mu Qinghe's situation didn't look too good. Hong Yao soon fell asleep in her hands. Chu Luiwei carefully put it down. Dumpling, on the other hand, was squatting obediently at the side. Chu Luiwei felt a little relieved. She glanced at the bracelet on her wrist, hesitated for a moment and took it off. She sat cross-legged and placed her hands on her knees. She closed her eyes and began to cultivate. When she broke through to become a stage 3 warrior last time, everything happened too suddenly. She didn't have time to examine her situation properly. Now she could finally calm down. In her dantian, on the water droplet, 3 lines were floating quietly. In the heavenly square cauldron, the transparent hellfire was constantly burning. The soul trapped in it was now on the verge of death. Chu Luiwei knew that it would still take some time to refine it, so she didn't care too much. Purple gold Bodhi leaf. The legendary three-eyed eagle suddenly spoke. Chu Luiwei was taken aback. What? If you want to help me recover my physical body, you need the purple gold Bodhi leaf. There was such a thing in the garden you went to today. The legendary three-eyed eagle explained. Chu Luiwei frowned slightly. Xianxia garden? There's no such thing there. There is. My senses can't be wrong. No, Chu Luiwei instinctively wanted to deny it. She was the one who took care of most of the herbs in Xianxia garden. Of course she knew what was inside. At least when she was around, there was definitely no purple gold Bodhi leaf in the garden. Because to the entire Tianling dynasty, it was only a herb that existed in legends. Moreover, purple gold Bodhi leaf was an extremely precious herb. Legend had it that a leaf's fragrance could spread for hundreds of miles. If it really existed in Xianxia garden, why didn't she feel it at all? Did you make a mistake? Chu Luiwei couldn't help but ask. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice was a little cold. Purple gold Bodhi leaf is the sacred tree of the legendary three-eyed eagle clan. How could I be wrong? Chu Luiwei was speechless. There was no need for the legendary three-eyed eagle to lie to her. Then, could it be that someone put it there after she died? But did xuanhuan and jianghu have the ability to get the purple gold Bodhi leaf? Then, do you know where the purple gold Bodhi leaf is? I know the approximate location. But there are many obstacles outside. Moreover, the 1,000-year-old purple gold Bodhi leaf is sentient. Not only does it have amazing defensive power, but it is also very good at hiding. Even if ordinary people see it with their own eyes, they won't be able to recognize it, let alone get it. With your current ability, it's basically a pipe dream. Chu Luiwei, then what's the point of telling me this? She said faintly. So, you told me this just to humiliate me? Of course not. I don't have the leisure to do that. Can't you talk properly? Ordinary people can't even get close to the purple gold Bodhi leaf, let alone get it. But if you have my aura on you, this won't be a problem. Chu Luiwei frowned slightly. You're in my dantian. As long as you can't hide, my body will be tainted with your aura. Isn't that enough? Of course not. The legendary three-eyed eagle paused for a moment before saying, "My physical body is now destroyed and only my spirit is left. It has nothing to do with you. Although my aura can overflow from your body, it has nothing to do with your own aura." Chu Liwei asked, "Then what should I do?" The legendary three-eyed eagle didn't speak for a long time. Just when Chu Liwei thought that it wasn't going to speak, its voice finally sounded, "I recognize you as my master, so I'll take the purple gold Bodhi leaf. You can read it from the Love Network for a better reading experience." Chapter 479. Chu Liwei took a while to react. The legendary three-eyed eagle actually took the initiative to speak and wanted to recognize her as its master. It was simply unbelievable. Even ordinary magical beasts were unwilling to recognize humans as their masters, let alone a supreme divine beast like the legendary three-eyed eagle? Even if a pie fell from the sky, it wouldn't fall like this? Chu Liwei was a little stunned by this sudden sentence. You're serious? If you dare to say that you're not willing, you're dead," the legendary three-eyed eagle said fiercely. Its voice was so cold that it could freeze 3,000 miles. If not for the sake of recovering its physical body, how could it be willing to recognize a human as its master? In the entire history of the legendary three-eyed eagle clan, there was almost no such thing. It felt more uncomfortable than anyone else and more unwilling than anyone else. But this was the only way. It had been burned in the heavenly square cauldron for thousands of years. The endless torment of the long nights had caused it unbearable pain. Its mind and will had long been destroyed countless times. If not for its last bit of obsession, it would have long been unable to hold on and died in the endless flames. Over time, this had already become its last pillar of support. So, it must find a way to recover its physical body and return to its previous peak. Chu Liwei coughed. "This kind of thing, I think everyone would wish for it, right? But I already have Dumpling. I'm afraid this will be a little difficult." As she spoke, she opened her eyes. As expected, she saw Dumpling staring fiercely at her lower abdomen. Its entire body was filled with surging murderous intent. It looked like if Chu Liwei agreed, it would immediately fight. The legendary three-eyed eagle sneered with undisguised pride. "I am a divine beast. Naturally, I am not restricted by this rule." The saying that a person could only have one magical beast at a time was a rule for ordinary magical beasts. But to a divine beast, this was not a problem at all. Chu Liwei opened her eyes slightly. This was the first time she had heard of such a thing. So divine beasts were really so capable? Dumpling bared its teeth and let out a threatening roar. Its two claws were clenched into fists. It wanted to fight this fellow to the death. Chu Liwei was caught in a dilemma. On one hand, she didn't want Dumpling to be unhappy, but on the other hand, she really did want to help the legendary three-eyed eagle recover its physical body. After hesitating for a moment, she asked, "There should be other ways, right?" The legendary three-eyed eagle sneered. "Of course there is. As long as your strength reaches the 8th rank, the success rate will greatly increase." Chu Liwei, she was only a rank 3 warrior now. Who knew how long it would take for her to break through to rank 8? Chu Liwei looked at Dumpling. "Dumpling, let me ask you again seriously. What is your stance on this matter?" If he agreed, he would nod. If he didn't, he would shake his head. "Whatever you say, that's what it is, okay." Dumpling was stunned and looked at her blankly. It didn't expect that Chu Liwei would let it make a decision. It was indeed jealous. Whenever it thought that Chu Liwei would no longer belong to it alone, it felt very uncomfortable. It had found her with great difficulty. But when she asked it so sincerely and seriously, it suddenly didn't know what to do. In this world, if someone could get a divine beast, how ecstatic would they be? They probably wouldn't even blink if they were asked to kill their own magical beast with their own hands. But she said that whatever it said was what it said was. In this world, there would be no one else like her. Dumpling's eyes turned sour. It quickly turned around and wiped its eyes with its tail. The legendary three-eyed eagle said coldly, "Let it in. I will talk to it personally." Chu Liwei was a little surprised. After she said those words, the legendary three-eyed eagle was actually angry. She had thought that the prideful three-eyed eagle clan would fly into a rage out of humiliation after being compared to a third-grade magical beast, and even be judged by the third-grade magical beast whether or not it could recognize a human as its master. Dumpling wiped its tears and looked deeply at Chu Liwei before entering her dantian. The two magical beasts looked at each other across the heavenly square cauldron. Chu Liwei knew that magical beasts had their ways of communicating. Unfortunately, she didn't know what they were talking about, so she waited quietly. The legendary three-eyed eagle looked at Dumpling with a trace of ridicule in its eyes. It used telepathy to send a message. Normal magical beasts can't withstand the pressure of a divine beast. Even if they can recognize the same master, they will quickly explode and die. However, you don't have this concern at all. What's there to object? Dumpling stared at it and didn't say anything. Don't you know that the bloodline of the divine beast in my body is also beneficial to you? Do you really want to be a third-grade blood ferret for the rest of your life? Are you willing? Dumpling clenched its claws and trembled slightly. Even if you are willing, with her potential, she will definitely reach the top of this continent in the future. When that time comes, what can you do to help her? The last sentence of the legendary three-eyed eagle was the last straw that broke the camel's back. In Tuanzi's glass-like eyes, there seemed to be stars shining brightly for a moment. It finally said, "Remember, I am number one. Don't even think about fighting for it." The legendary three-eyed eagle seemed to laugh. You are finally willing to admit it? In this world, anyone who could call themselves that. Dumpling didn't pay any more attention to it. It turned and left quickly. The next moment, it appeared in front of Chu Luiyue again. How was your conversation? Chu Luiyue asked. Dumpling's expression had returned to its usual expression. It frowned and looked like it was wronged. If you don't like it, we won't. Dumpling suddenly shook its head. It rushed over and squatted on her shoulder, rubbing its face against hers. Then he nodded his head gently. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Dumpling, you agree? Dumpling buried its head in its tail and didn't move. However, its meaning couldn't be more obvious. It actually agreed? Chu Luiyue's heart was filled with doubts. According to her understanding of Dumpling, it shouldn't be too willing. She really didn't know what the two of them were talking about just now. She was happy and distressed. She pinched Dumpling's ear. The legendary three-eyed eagle said, "Let's begin." Chu Luiyue grunted. Whoosh! The sound of wings flapping suddenly came. Chu Luiyue looked up. A black phantom of the legendary three-eyed eagle appeared in front of her. I have already sealed the surroundings. No one will notice. The legendary three-eyed eagle didn't open its mouth, but its voice fell clearly into Chu Luiyue's ears. Chu Luiyue nodded. Now, cut open your palm and pledge your blood to me. Chu Luiyue used a dagger to gently cut her palm. Blood gushed out. Buzz! A slowly rotating silver disc suddenly appeared in front of her. She sensed a divine and dignified aura emanating from it. She was slightly shocked. This seemed to be the aura of the heavenly Tao. The legendary three-eyed eagle chanted in a low voice, "The heavenly Tao is above. I swear on the bloodline of the legendary three-eyed eagle clan. Chu Luiyue is my master. From now on, I'll be loyal and do my best, and I'll never betray you." Chapter 480. A strange pattern gradually appeared on the disc. Suddenly, Chu Luiyue felt that there was a vast and subtle aura in her body. That was the legendary three-eyed eagle. Immediately after, the surrounding heaven and earth energy suddenly started to surge towards her silently. The speed of devouring was actually several times faster than when she was cultivating. Chu Luiyue was slightly shocked, but she still subconsciously absorbed the energy and transformed it into her own body. After some time, the commotion finally stopped. The disc suddenly transformed into a stream of light and brought the black legendary three-eyed eagle phantom into Chu Luiyue's body. Chu Luiyue clearly felt that something was different. There was another wisp of Heaven Dao's power in her body. She slowly lowered her head and looked at her hands. In this short period of time, her strength had increased by a lot. It was almost to the point of touching the barrier of a rank 4 warrior. If an ordinary rank 3 warrior contracted a divine beast and accepted the Heaven Dao's power, they would at least break through to the peak of rank 4 or even rank 5. You actually didn't even cross the threshold of a rank 4 warrior. The legendary three-eyed eagle suddenly said. Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she shrugged. She originally thought that she had advanced quite a bit, but she didn't expect that. But her body did have this problem and she was basically used to it. This is good too. Although relying on external forces to break through quickly can increase one's realm quickly, it might not be a good thing. She now hoped that she could spar with someone to strengthen her foundation. The Wanzheng competition was an excellent opportunity. The next morning, Chu Luiyue simply packed up and went out. Duanziyu was waiting outside the courtyard. Seeing him, Chu Luiyue then remembered that she was busy with the legendary three-eyed eagle yesterday and actually forgot about Mu Qinghe. Is Vice Admiral Mu back? She asked. Duanziyu said respectfully. Lieutenant General came back last night and left an hour ago. Left? What's so urgent? Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. Why was Mu Qinghe so busy? The injuries on his body shouldn't have fully recovered yet, right? I don't know about that. The deputy general asked me to bring you to the Wanzheng competition. Chu Luiyue smiled. Then I'll have to trouble you, Lieutenant Duan. When he woke up in the morning, Hong Yao had already left. She must have gone to find Mu Qinghe. Actually, she wanted to see him, but now was not the time. She could only wait. The next time Vice Admiral Mu comes back, please inform me, Lieutenant Duan. I have something to discuss with Vice Admiral Mu. Because of Hong Yao, Duan Ziyu was more polite to Chu Luiyue. Don't worry, Miss Chu. With that, the two of them headed to the Xuanji Square together. On the main street, people were already coming and going. It was very lively. Most of them were heading in the same direction. Chu Luiyue and Duan Ziyu followed the crowd forward. Although Duan Ziyu was wearing black armor because the black cavalry was everywhere in Xiling, he didn't attract much attention. Instead, it was Chu Luiyue who attracted a lot of attention. No matter where she went, her alluring face would become the most eye-catching existence. Who is that girl? Why haven't I seen her in Xiling City before? With such beauty, she definitely isn't a nobody. She must have come from outside Heaven's Canopy to participate in the Wanzheng competition? Ah, I recognize her. She's the girl who defeated Wu Zhao yesterday. Seems like I got it right. Chu Luiyue. It was unknown who suddenly said this, but it caused quite a commotion in the crowd. As a beginner Stage 5 warrior, Wu Zhao was defeated by a Stage 3 warrior in Pingliang Square. He was even asked for 10 white crystal coins by the other party before he could escape. This matter had already spread throughout the entire Xiling city. Actually, a battle of this level normally wouldn't attract so many people's attention. After all, there were many powerful figures here. But the difference between the two people's levels was too big. Jumping so many levels to battle and winning in the end naturally made everyone very curious. They didn't expect it to be her. Chu Luiyue was already used to such gazes and discussions. She completely ignored them and walked forward. Instead, it was Duan Ziyu who couldn't help but take a few more glances at her. Actually, he already heard about this matter yesterday. But thinking about it now, he still felt that it was somewhat unbelievable. Especially on this day of interacting with Chu Luiyue, the feeling she gave people was gentle and noble from beginning to end, not like that kind of ruthless character at all. But the person personally selected by the Deputy General was naturally not ordinary. Furthermore, he clearly felt that the aura on Chu Luiyue's body was actually much stronger than yesterday. This girl might really be hiding her abilities. Xuanji Square was the second largest square in the entire Xiling city. It was enough to accommodate 100,000 people at the same time. Chu Luiyue arrived with the crowd and saw the all-too-familiar square. Around it were circular steps. At this time, there were already many people waiting on top, clearly wanting to watch the show. After all, in this Wanzheng competition, all the participants were cultivators with the Daijingyuan meridian. One could imagine how exciting the competition would be. Around the competition grounds, the black cavalry were dressed in armor and holding spears, neatly lined up. And on the square there were also many people standing scattered around. At a rough glance, there were at least 200 to 300 people. And there were still people going up continuously. Those people were obviously cultivators with the Daijingyuan meridian. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. Among those people there were actually a few familiar faces. This Wanzheng competition didn't seem to be specially prepared for cultivators with the Daijingyuan meridian outside Heaven's Canopy. Some of the younger generation's geniuses in Xiling City had also come. What exactly were xuanhuan and the rest planning to do? Miss Chu, I can only send you here, Duan Ziyu said in a low voice. I will wait for you there. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly and walked forward. When she reached the edge of the square, two soldiers blocked her way. Please show your identity. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment and raised her hand, showing the bracelet on her wrist to the two of them. The two of them confirmed it before retreating. Please? Chu Luiyue had just gone up when she heard whispers from the side. One of the voices was rather familiar. She turned her head to look. She saw a few people standing together, pointing at her and whispering to each other. The person in the middle was Zhao Yunji, who had a grudge with her the day before. When she noticed Chu Luiyue looking over, she didn't feel guilty. Instead, she sneered and raised her voice. Yes, it's her. The few people beside her looked disgusted. She's really just a Stage 3 cultivator? Where did she get the guts to offend our soaring cloud sect? She doesn't look old, but she's very arrogant. Zhao Yunji's eyes flashed with a hint of smugness as she walked in front of Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue, I want to challenge you. Do you dare to accept? Upon closer inspection, it turned out that it was a list of names. The names were arranged in pairs in order. In front of the jade board there were also many people standing in pairs. They seemed to be waiting for the two old men to write their names. The first round is done in pairs? Chu Luiyue asked with narrowed eyes. Of course. Moreover, this is only the preliminaries. After this round, it will be considered the official competition. And those who are eliminated in this round will be kicked out. Therefore, Zhao Yunji decided to step on Chu Luiyue from the start. What? You don't dare? Chu Luiyue chuckled. Why wouldn't I dare? Just go. With that, she walked towards the center. Zhao Yunji looked at her carefree expression and thought to herself, let's see how long you can pretend to be dumb. On the square, although everyone seemed to be standing casually, they were all secretly observing others. Who knew which one of them would be his opponent in the next round? There was no harm in knowing more about it. Chu Luiyue and Zhao Yunji walked over one after another and immediately attracted the attention of many people. There was no other reason. It was because Chu Luiyue was the only stage 3 warrior in the square. It was impossible not to be conspicuous. Some people's gazes toward Chu Luiyue immediately became strange. Are you kidding me? There's actually a stage 3 warrior participating? She's really bold. Doesn't she know how cruel the competition is? Or is she just here to have fun? Ha, this is Shi Ling. Who dares to say that they're here to have fun? I'm envious of the girl beside her. She's definitely going to win this round. Why didn't I notice it just now? Chu Luiyue pretended not to hear anything and quietly queued up. Soon it was her and Zhao Yunji's turn. Just put the beads on your bracelets here. One of the elders pointed at a groove at the bottom of the jade board. I'll go first. Zhao Yunji was one step ahead of him and placed her bead on it. The bronze bead emitted a faint light. Then a name suddenly appeared in the empty space on the jade board. Zhao Yunji. Below her name, a small line of words appeared at the same time and quickly disappeared. Chu Luiyue, who was standing nearby, could clearly see that the line of words said, Soaring Cloud Sect Qianxia. This was an indication of her identity. The two old men glanced at each other and nodded their heads. The old man standing on the left even had a smile on his face. I heard that you're only 17 years old this year and are already at the beginner stage of stage 5. Not bad. If you perform well, Soaring Cloud Sect will have another outstanding disciple. Zhao Yunji was flattered. Thank you, Elder Qiushi. Before she came, she had heard from her cousin that Elder Qiushi was also from Soaring Cloud Sect. Although he later became an elder in the palace, he had always taken care of Soaring Cloud Sect. Elder Qiushi was even more satisfied that the girl in front of him knew his name. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but curl her lips. Chen Shiyuan and Zhao Yunji arrived at Xiling later than her, but in just one night, Zhao Yunji not only knew the process of the competition, she even knew the identity of the exam elder. It could be said that she didn't put in any effort. Who are you in a group with? Elder Qiushi asked. Zhao Yunji smiled sweetly and pointed at Chu Luiyue behind her. It's her. Seeing that Chu Luiyue was only a stage 3 warrior, Elder Qiushi's smile faded a little. You just have to follow what she did before. Chu Luiyue didn't mind his cold attitude. She stepped forward and put the bead into the groove. A faint glow flashed. On the jade board, her name finally appeared next to Zhao Yunji's name. Chu Luiyue. Soon, a small line of words appeared below. Dragon Teeth Mountain Jianfengqi. Chu Luiyue blinked. That's not right. She was brought here by Mu Qinghe. How could Jianfengqi be here? Lu Xingyi didn't even ask yesterday. He must have thought that she was brought here by Jianfengqi. However, Zhao Yunji's expression froze. Jianfengqi, the rumored tyrant of Xiling City, the young master of Dragon Teeth Mountain, Jianfengqi? Digression. Your phone has been fixed. Please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.